Agenda.
Susie, do you have a paper agenda?
Yes, I do. Here.
Is that yours?
Yes, I'm just they're right there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Made it in time. Like we.
You can drive.
Well, I had to find an umbrella. It's now 7 o'clock. We'll get started. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Pleasant Hill Recreation and Park District for Thursday, March 9th, 2023. You may notice that our agenda font looks a little different this evening. There might be a few other things that are a little different this evening, so I wanted to just start with that. Members of the public can still join in on Zoom at the address that is listed in our agenda. People can also call in and participate in this meeting at the phone number that is listed on the agenda. However, we have now moved to an agendizing system called Diligent, which, if not already, then soon will allow us to live stream on our YouTube channel our meetings. And Michelle, are we live streaming this evening, or is that?
We are live streaming.
We are live streaming.
We are testing today as another.
Okay, we're beta testing today then. I'm glad everyone shaved their beards and, you know, it just looks really, really good. I know that a few meetings ago, we'd asked the question about whether we were actually going to be viewed. And the answer at that time was no, but we are now being viewed and we'll continue to have YouTube presentations available into the future. So this is not just a video recording for the purpose of creating minutes as it used to be, but rather this meeting will be recorded for posterity on our YouTube channel. So we wish to welcome anyone who is also watching us this evening on YouTube. We'll start. I think we may be missing a page.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda, the paper agenda.
Okay. Yeah, it's 4 pages. So we have so Pledge of Allegiance and then public comments.
I'm sorry.
Pledge of Allegiance is next.
Yes. Well, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Vice Chair Vincent, would you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That's a bit different. Let the record show that all directors are present this evening. And item number 3 on our agenda is public comment. This is the portion of our meeting at which members of the public may address the board of directors on any subject not on our agenda this evening. Are there any members of the public present here who would like to address the board? No. Seeing none. Susie, do we have any emails? Okay. Michelle, any hands raised?
No raised hands.
Okay, so we'll close public comment then and move to item number 4, reports and presentations. The first is the introduction of full-time staff members hired in the recreation division since July 2022. Michelle, this is an exciting opportunity for you to let us.
Exciting
show us some new people.
Our newest team members that we're always excited to have. So we're doing since that have started since July 2022. So those that have started in this fiscal year, mainly because we wanted to wait until we became live, and so since we didn't do that until the end of last calendar year, so I wanted to bring them in today and introduce them to the board of directors individually. And so I'm excited to introduce 4 new coordinators. They're all full-time staff members. Some of them were promoted internally from other positions, and some are brand new to our organization. which is always exciting because brand new employees also bring new ideas and help create a very rich environment. So in your packet, I did provide an updated organizational chart of full-time employees that should help you kind of get a lay of where the full-time employees land within the organization. But first, I'm going to introduce them in order of the oldest hire to the newest hire. So I had to pick an order. So I'm first going to introduce Drew Pitcher. Come on up.
There's a name we've never heard before.
So Drew is now fortunately a full-time coordinator. Drew has worked with the district as well as through many years part-time, and now he has joined us in a full-time capacity. He's our team coordinator, and we're excited to have him. He also graduated from my alma mater, Gaucho, so we share that in common. So Drew, I have asked each of the employees to just provide a little bit about themselves, background experience, and either why they chose to work with PHR with Rec and Park, or something that they're looking forward to achieving while here. So,
Drew, in addition to just sharing alumni rings with our general manager, we look forward to hearing them.
So I got my first job at 15 lifeguard pool with the Rec and Park. Been with the team program for the last 10 years. Grew up doing all the programs, born and raised in Pleasant Hill. Just excited to be able to jump and make career moves and further my way in Park and Rec. And there's no better way to do it than places like family.
Great. What's a typical day for you?
It changes every day. Fly by the seat of your pants, adjust. You never know. Keep yourself on the toes and just adapt. But pick up kids from school. They have a school program too. Valley View. Make your way to Pleasant Middle School, pick up those kids, and then the chaos is in the team center. So it's fun. I love it. Live. I'm a big kid myself, but yeah.
It's probably the greatest attribute you could have to be a great team coordinator.
Absolutely.
Very good. I know you have a cabin up near Kybers or Strawberry. Are you
Yeah,
worried about it?
My brother does, yeah. There's tons of snow. I haven't been up there yet.
Yeah, it must really be bad.
It's crazy.
Any questions from any of the board members? Just welcome them, Drew.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Next up, we actually hired 3 people all at the same time in the senior program, and so. But I'm going to start with our newest addition, Michael Manalastis. Michael, you want to come up? Great. Michael is our senior coordinator. He's responsible for nutrition and trip, if I remember. And Michael has had various positions with we stole him from the Greater Vallejo Recreation and Park District. He also worked for the city of San Pablo previously. And one of the things that stuck out to me, Michael actually applied for the team coordinator position. And he came into that interview and said, well, he wants to be in Rec and Park. He really wanted to be in the senior position that was that. And so from that recruitment, we're actually able to get a couple of great candidates. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good evening, board of directors. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, I have over 7 years of recreation experience from every position you can think of: rec leader, working with teens, youth, adults, seniors, scrubbing grills, taking out garbage, cleaning toilets. So pretty much worked my way from the bottom up. My personal lifestyle, just enjoy the outdoors, enjoy cooking, barbecuing, playing sports. I ran Division II track and field. I'm still trying to play, pick up basketball here and there, tennis, golf. Boxing is a new hobby I got into. And yeah, hopefully my goal here is to hopefully potentially finish my career here in the district. Hopefully moving up the ladder, whether it's supervisor, manager, superintendent, maybe a GM if I'm willing to take the task. Yes, I know. One thing here, wanted to choose this district in particular is because the reputation it stands within the whole state of California, kind of word gets around within the California Rec District. all across the Bay. I just wanted to represent, my culture, where I'm from, kind of promote diversity, bring my leadership in my experience and, and show those skills, on a daily. Hope to stay committed every day. This job, working with seniors in particular, gives me a true purpose to get up every morning. It's truly fun, challenging at times, but without challenges, there's no success, or you can't succeed without failure. So happy to be here. Hopefully I can move up many years to come and attend these meetings, at a higher tier position. So, be a member of the space. It's already time.
We have no questions because you answered it all. Now, it's wonderful to lure you from someplace else, but also we appreciate the compliment. Also your interest in staying long term. So that is wonderful. No threat, Michelle, right?
I'm more than willing to groom anybody.
There you go.
One last thing, I think overall, every staff has been super friendly, open. It's a really true environment type of workplace, which we should continue to promote. So I'm enjoying it. Congrats to everyone here that's been hired. It's a true accomplishment. Just working here in itself. So let's continue a dynasty. That's what I like to call it. Moving forward.
But we're glad you're finding it what you had hoped it would be. And also our seniors are privileged to have you with your joy, obvious joy, and delight in what you do and what you bring to them. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. The other coordinator in seniors is Karen McKinney, and I don't believe she could be here tonight. But Karen was actually promoted from the administrative assistant position to the coordinator position, and so she was promoted during that transition, and so Karen is the other coordinator and Michael's other half as a coordinator. So she's been a great addition and is fantastic as well. But the third person in the senior center, so we had quite a bit of transition after Kendra left us for Kansas. It's Stephanie Harrison. Stephanie is an administrative assistant with us, and we're super lucky to have Stephanie. So Stephanie has a background in gerontology and working with seniors, and she's a great addition. She has the patience of Joe working with our senior volunteers at the front desk, helping them do a registration and all of that. So she keeps everybody on task. So Stephanie, you want to say a little bit?
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie. Just
Go ahead.
All right. I'm Stephanie, and I worked in the medical field for a long time, and then decided to go get my recreation degree. And while I was getting my degree, I was able to intern for Pleasant Hill, and I loved it. I loved the culture and the staff and the community. I went on to become a recreation coordinator for Vallejo. And then, yeah, she sold me too.
I sold you.
And so then the opportunity arose to apply at Pleasant Hill, and I jumped on it. And now I'm at the senior center and learning all kinds of fun and exciting things about the programs and the events that we offer. I hope to, or would love to, eventually be a recreation coordinator here when the opportunity arises. But for now, I love the experience I'm getting at the senior center, working with the volunteers, as Michelle said, and the staff, and just kind of transitioning into my new role. I love the district, so I'm happy to be here.
So there's quite a changeover from a medical professional to
Yes.
A recreational professional, but there seems to be an underlying theme there, working with some seniors, right?
Yes.
How does your gerontology background, what does that help you bring to your job daily?
Well, patience.
Said.
Yeah, the medical field, I work with seniors there also, so kind of the same thing, you know, we would help them fill out their forms and help them get around to wherever they needed to be. I worked at Rossmore, so we had different doctors at Rossmore helping them schedule their appointments, being, you know, an assistant to them for whatever they needed. And so I'm kind of in the same role here at the senior center, helping them register new members and helping them find whatever they need, from if they need to talk to Dana for housing assistance, if they want to come dance on a Thursday for our tea dance, or if they need a hot meal because they don't have anywhere else to go for our cafe. So it was a pretty smooth transition for me, just in different places.
Sounds like questions from board members.
There's nothing wrong with somebody in the medical field coming into
No,
recreation.
not at all, especially when we poach them from the layup. No, I have one other question, and it had to do with, well, not question, but comment that I hope that your very broad experience working with seniors and your understanding of their needs, as well as maybe your time at Rossmore as well, can help you help us develop some programs that keep us up to speed with what our seniors are looking for. So not sure if that's quite in your work scope at the moment, but as you progress here at the Park District, that would be very valuable. Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie.
So Michael, Karen, and Stephanie all came on in August timeframe, so of last year. So they're all hitting about 6 months in. So the shiny has kind of worn off the district. So and so, but they've been a fantastic addition, as all of these employees have. And then our most recent hire in the beginning of 2023 is Victoria Davis in sports and aquatics. Sort of come on. So Victoria has a broad range of experience, including as an athlete playing basketball, working in various athletic capacities, as well as working with the fair play for girls in sports. And so she and I have some crossover in some of the work that she's currently doing and that I've done in the past as well. Victoria, she interviewed for the position and knocked it out of the park. She's been getting herself up to speed, and we're super excited to have her join our team. She's been dynamic, and we really appreciated that she's jumped right in. So Victoria, do you want to give a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Victoria Davis. My journey has been interesting, I would say. But I'm the type of person that's happy to do any and everything to get myself to a place where I believe I belong. And for me, some of my coworkers I've been with for the past few weeks have heard this a few times, but I started playing basketball at age 7. And when I was 7 was the same year that the WNBA launched. So as you can imagine, for me, I'm from Southern California. I was a Laker fan already. I instantly was a Sparks fan. My mom took me to my first game and I said, that's it. I'm going to be a basketball player. I'm going to be a WNBA player. Well, initially I was going to be an NBA player. I didn't want to play with the girls. I wanted to be an NBA player. But eventually I figured, you know what? Maybe I'll play in the WNBA to show all the men how important we actually are, right? So that didn't happen. And but my journey, I played basketball from age 7 to 18, got to college, had torn my body up and just couldn't go anymore. And it made me really sad because I couldn't figure out what I was going to do without sports. What I was able to figure out very soon once I got to college at UC Davis was that I didn't have to live without sports. I just had to figure out how to have sports keep living with me. And the way that started was in athletic training. I became an athletic trainer for UC Davis in the student program and then eventually certifying. I loved it, fell in love with it, but it was a little limiting for me as, you know, I could only do so many things. So I decided to go back to school, get my master's in kinesiology and emphasizing in sports management. And from there, I just ran the LA sports scene and worked for a lot of pro teams, a lot of different, foundations and all kinds of cool stuff, just trying to figure out where I belong. And what I determined is I belong everywhere. Every sport, any sport, I can do it all, I will do it all. So I ended up moving back to the Bay Area, started running a 24-hour fitness in Hayward. That was a lot of fun, did all kinds of stuff. And eventually I decided to make a shift and do some more administrative things, and well, maybe I belong over there. I did not. And so I made my way back here and ended up with the district. And it's been absolutely positively everything I've been looking for the whole time. It encompasses all the things that I have done, can do, will do, and it makes me very hopeful for the future that I might have finally found some place to plant roots and hang out for a bit. And that's the plan, is to hang out here in the district and grow programs, make things, better that need to be better, keep things in place that are already in place. Lance has been a wealth of knowledge. He's been here for quite some time, and he's passing on all of his gems. They unfortunately live in his head, so I'm pulling them out of his head, putting them, somewhere where I can reference them. But it's been absolutely amazing, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, it just goes to show you don't have to be a man in the MBA to do really great things.
Absolutely.
Yes. I have a friend who is 92 years old, and she's just stopped playing basketball, and she's shorter than you. I mean, and she just loves it down to the ground, and she's darn good at it too. It's just amazing, just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a delight to have you here. I did have an opportunity to meet Victoria earlier. Corey brought her to introduce us, and had a very enjoyable conversation. I know a lot of stuff lives in Lance's head, so we need to pull it out and put it someplace. And so let us know what kind of tools you need in order to to succeed. And I'm not talking about forceps.
So far, so good. He's easy going guy. It makes it easy.
Corey, thank you too for your mentorship here to make this really a successful transition with our athletics department. So we're just delighted to have you. Questions or comments from any board members?
Go ahead.
What was that? Go.
Go Aggies.
So how many Aggies are in the room then?
I always find myself with the Aggies too, so yeah.
I too with UC Davis and become a student. It was the transition from athletics to no athletics.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah, Davis is not known for its abundance of, sports athletes going on to the league or anything like that. So it got interesting for sure, but found my way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Welcome to.
Thank you.
So those are our newest full-time employees, as well as those that have moved up in positions. And so, as always, I'm pleased to bring staff here. I don't make them come. A lot of them watch on Zoom, and now I'm sure you too. But I appreciate them all staying late and coming out for that, so we can have that opportunity. All of these employees, I know, will make us a better team. We have a really great team for just getting better as we add staff. So,
And we're appreciative too. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. So we will move on to 4.2, which is the report from our general manager, Michelle.
great. Thank you very much.
Yes. Oh, this is the point in which you're free to leave.
You're free to unless you want to stay.
Our families and lives, we know.
So this evening I included a written GM report. I wanted to make a couple of updates. The first being that on the event sponsorships, Jennifer Thwaites presented to the city of Pleasant Hill on Monday night, and the council did approve an annual sponsorship of various events for $12,375. That's an increase of just about $22,100 over last year. So we appreciate the city's support in those events, as well as Chair Bernardo mentioned the new agenda management system that allows us to integrate video in not just the audio that we had previous, which seemed to be buggy and people had a hard time accessing. So this is definitely a more seamless way to provide access for our community. And so if any of you would like training, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to get on Zoom with you and go through it. The new on your side, there's an opportunity for you to annotate and highlight and make notes and things like that. So so please let me know. And then I just wanted to provide the board, I'm working with OSA to provide a general plan comment letter from the district to the city in support of their inclusion of the policies related to PHRPD and request future consideration of improvements to streamline project approval for the district. And so that is the gist of, that's what the letter is going to say. I wanted to let the board know that I was sending that letter on behalf of the district. I will copy all of you on that, so you will have that. The request I'm making isn't for this portion of the general plan. It really is for the after the general plan is adopted. But I just wanted to let you all know that I'll be sending that letter and copying you on it. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Michelle?
Another question, for the new agenda system, is there a way to download the file as sort of one big?
You can,
file?
yeah. I can show you how to do that as well. I know that Susie downloaded it and sent it to you as one big file.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of broken out to like smaller files right now.
Okay, yeah, yes, there is a way, so I can show you how to do that.
Yeah, I just figured out how to use my iPad and now.
Oh, no, Sandy, I'm that's curveballs at you, I know, I apologize.
Curveballs are us.
Sometimes with this is to get the agenda, but I only saw like the first 4 pages of it. I didn't know if there was something.
So each of those is an individual link for each of the attachments. And I sent you a screenshot of what that looked like. And so so you could look at it in a bookmark format, or you can look at it all in one. So it's really easier for you to manage that. And so if I get on with you, I'll show you where to click there. So it'll be a little easier. So I'll be happy. It'll take me 10 minutes on Zoom to teach you how to do that.
Right. Yeah, no, I think I can figure that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. Let's take her up on it though, okay?
Yeah.
Or Sandy Vincent is also, so,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
she gets private lessons in homes.
Yeah. I'm excited about the annotation feature because I generally just do that separate program and then have to manage those, you know, when I pull up during these meetings. So I think it'll be helpful to have it all in one place.
It works.
It does. Okay, good.
Michelle, you and I had talked about the minutes feature of this, so can you discuss a little bit about what we can expect in terms of future
So our
minutes?
minutes are going to be similar. They're action minutes. But the difference is that we're going to timestamp the video to each of those agenda items. So it'll be easier for either the board or the public to go directly to when that agenda item starts to hear that information. And so right now it's the way we do the audio is a little clunky. And if you have a pop-up blocker, it doesn't work. And so, but this will be much easier for that. We'll be doing basic minutes. And then once we're all comfortable, we'll talk about action on the minutes in the future.
So I know we've had some discussion here as a board about the composition of minutes. This is an effort to do a topical set of minutes linked to the actual audio and video presentation. So everything that's said about a presentation will be recorded. So it'll be there.
And easily accessible. Right now, it's still.
Yeah. Any questions at all about this? Yes, wait. No, please.
Wanted to ask is it possible to check the mailing list for the spotlight? Because
The mailing list for the spotlight.
yeah, because my parts of my neighborhood never received that. I didn't receive it in my entire street.
Yeah, so we drop ship that. There isn't a mailing list, so we drop ship that to the entire zip code of Pleasant Hill. And so what that means is that then it's the responsibility of the post office and the individual carriers to deliver that. And sometimes, hopefully and frequently, that doesn't happen. But there isn't a mailing list. It's drop shipped to the entire everyone. But I will have Jen talk to them if we know of an entire area that didn't get the spotlight, then we'll follow up with the post office. I know Jen's listening, so.
Thank you.
Just to comment on your comment about Jen making her presentation, I did watch the city council meeting. She knocked it out of the park. She really did a wonderful job. And so I know that there was a request from a council member to be given dates and invitations ahead of time. Not only has Jen done that, but she's also provided that to all of us in advance as well. So I really want to applaud Jen for being so thorough, but also so just warm and wonderful in her presentation to the city. She's a great representative.
I was also there at the meeting in person, and she was a great presentation. So tell Jen that she did a fabulous job. The city council really were engaged. So it's great.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to item 4.3. Oh, I'm sorry, Sandy.
On the building maintenance, regarding the glue lamp. Is it, I know that there's a 2-year evaluation with a structural engineer, and when they look at them every 6 months, do they eyeball them or do they go up there and
We measure out of plumbness.
Okay.
So there's specific measurements that were instructed by the structural engineer to take, and so we measure those and keep records.
Okay. I just didn't know if it's every 2 years now, should it be every 1 year?
No, every 2 years, the structural engineer, it hasn't moved much.
Yeah.
Every 2
Well,
years.
that's
So,
it. Well, glue lamp shouldn't.
yeah, well,
Hopefully.
our
Oh, it's not your stress. It's so your stress.
yeah, but we seem to have stopped that at least for now. So.
Yeah, I know. With the status of that building in general, I was glad to see that there was somebody coming out and checking it. So that was good. And also, Jen knocked it out of the park at the city, but she did a presentation previously to the budget committee of the city. And I happened to watch that one live, and she was on, and she did I think a little bit long presentation, and she really did an excellent job. So not only did she do it once, but she had to do it again in front of the city council. So she did a great job, and I'm glad that she's being acknowledged for the work that she did.
I have one follow-up question regarding the glue lamps. The measurements that are taken, are they done like seasonally? Because I know, at least where I live, things kind of shift as the seasons go. Are they?
Every 6 months.
Okay, so it is kind of to do dry and wet seasons. To
Correct. Yes, if the wet does change things.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yes. All right, anything else? Okay, I'm moving to 4.3, the report from the Youth Services Manager, Katrina Hunn, regarding highlights of the 2023 summer camp and aquatics expo and registration issues encountered on February 25th, 2023. Michelle?
Yes, so I asked Katrina Hunn to come and provide the board with an update on the Camp Expo registration, the unfortunate technical issues that we had. As one customer said, enrolling was harder than getting Taylor Swift ticket. We kind of had our third party vendor kind of had a ticket master type meltdown. So Katrina and staff on site did a fabulous job, not only on site holding things together, but also following up with customers after the fact. And so I'm going to turn it over to Katrina.
Hi, good evening. So this was our 7th Summer Camp Expo. We started the expo many years ago in an effort to have one day where people could come and ask questions about the camps that they were interested in for their children. We also had the goal of being able to register people earlier for camps, so that would give us an idea of how many people we needed to staff for that summer. Through time, the registrations for our camps have really skyrocketed. When I was comparing to pre-COVID shutdown numbers, our revenues have doubled on Expo Day just specifically. And we've seen almost a triple in the amount of receipts trying to be processed that day. So the youth services team and Aquatics get together and they put on this expo. We invite the contractors for the specialty camps to also participate. Everyone who's in the spotlight is offered a booth, and those who decide to be present are there. And then we have the booths for people to get their questions answered, and then we also are here to assist with registrations. So unfortunately this year we saw right out of the gate 9 a.m. The system glitched. which meant that anybody who had something in their cart and went to try to check out, they got a blank screen and were unable to do so. So all of those registrations were being held, Civic Rec holds them for 20 minutes to give them an opportunity to complete their transaction. So right out of the gate, we were showing that things were full with a wait list. Even though they weren't full, there was no one registered in them, but they were taking a wait list. So I have to give it to the staff that were all here. Everyone really stayed calm and tried repeatedly to help every customer. But we worked hard to find workarounds in order to get people to register. And then quickly got on the phone with our third-party vendor, Civic Rec, and emergency support, which also had a failure. And so it took about an hour before we were really moving, but we stayed as long as we needed to and got everybody through the line. We tried as hard as we could to answer the phone, because normally it's just very few phone calls. You know, people having trouble with something, it's usually an age override. A lot of our camps are listed as grades, but the system recognizes ages. So their kid might not quite be old enough for the camp yet. So we unfortunately could not keep up with the volume on the phone, and we were completely unable to keep up with the volume of people who were emailing customer service. But we tried to make as many people happy as possible, and then spent the next week. Well, some of us spent all of Saturday and some of Sunday, and then all of the next week, reaching out to people, especially people who had registered for or were on wait list for multiple activities, to see if there was something that they were in but didn't necessarily want, and there was like something that they were on the wait list for, and moved things around. And then we also upped the numbers for quite a few of our classic camps. The classic camps are anything that our staff works and operates. So some of our high registration activities were things like Adventure Kids Camp over at Gregory Gardens, as well as summer rec camp over at College Park. And so we were able to maneuver, add some more things, get some more people in. We are still in the process of working with the third-party vendor Civic Rec for answers as to what happened. Corey and I have a follow-up conference call with them next Thursday. Their engineers are supposed to have more information for us as to what caused the glitch. They say it's not because of volume to their server, but we need more information than that. So we are hoping that they will have more appropriate answers for us, and that we won't have this problem in the future. It was hard because it wasn't just one issue. We had things where like customers couldn't add more than 2 things to their cart. We had errors where the screen went blank and they couldn't get anything. So we're really thinking that the volume in which we've reached in terms of how many people are trying to register for what they call it a competitive registration, that system might not meet our needs anymore. But we will have more information on that very soon. I do think that despite all that, we did amazing financially for that day. 645,000 is a lot for a district of our size, and the number of receipts being 1,700 for the day. Pre-COVID, I think we were in the like 300 to 400 range for the day. So people really like us. People believe in what we're offering. I heard repeatedly in the line, although people were frustrated, they were really excited to still participate in our programs and knew that we would do what it took to deliver the registration. So some things that we've discussed as staff in terms of potential changes for the future include separating swim lessons and the first day of camp registrations. Swim lessons take a little bit more time in terms of, especially with the private swim lessons, and there's a high demand and not as many spots. So that was one potential thing, as well as offering a resident registration early bird date and then opening it for general public on a separate day. We also talked about potentially hosting the information camp fair on one day and then having registration open on a different date. So people could still have their questions answered, but there wasn't such a buzz to also do the registrations. And then also we talked about people being able to drop off their registrations on paper and then doing some sort of lottery so that they can make it as fair as possible for everyone. And then we talked about potentially doing our classic or some of our high demand camps separate from the specialty camps and some of our others. And then we also talked about looking at different software options for the future. So that's what I have for you. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, let's see, first of all, if any board members have questions. Bobby.
Alternatives to civic rec, are there others?
There are some, but they all have their challenges. We did, when we switched to civic rec, it's been about 4 or 5 years now.
2013, yeah.
Yeah, so we looked at quite a few, and it was one of the ones that, while it didn't offer everything that we had prior to that, it worked the best for us. There's a lot of newer softwares, but some of them just aren't haven't evolved quite to what the capacity that we need, but we also haven't looked in a few years.
Others? Well, I'll start with civic rec, which is my hope is that when you have that meeting with them, that they recognize that it wasn't just the glitches, the software problems, it was also the lack of response, and that's unacceptable. I mean, things happen, but for them not to, I mean, they had told Corey to begin with, they would have somebody standing by for a big registration day. And the response was, and the help was non-existent, at least as far as I could see. So I agree with Bobby's question, which is maybe we should be looking. Maybe we should be looking, because that to me is just an unacceptable attribute to a company. The expos that I've been to in the past, I've been to them both here and in El Cerrito, have been really fun days. They've been hands-on. Kids get to play with Legos and put motors in them and do gymnastics, and I mean, they're just really activity type days, and they're a lot of fun to attend. This one, there wasn't the ability to do that because people were stuck in line, and for the most part, the expo was just here to entertain the kids while adults had to stand in line and keep their place, and so that. I like your idea of maybe separating the expo from the actual registration day so that there is an opportunity to do the reason that we have the expo, which is to meet instructors, ask questions, kind of explore what our kids would like, those kinds of opportunities. So I do like that idea. Otherwise, to me, it's just a registration day and there isn't really a need to have an expo because well, that kind of leads to my next point, which is I feel that there is a big disadvantage to people who come to the expo and register here for whatever reason. Maybe they don't have a computer. Maybe they, they want to ask an age eligibility question, get a dispensation for all of that. For whatever reason, people registering here were aced out of spots. So there, I don't think there was a fair balance between those who came and registered on site and those who registered at 9 a.m. online. Glitch or no glitch, I just felt that there was a disparity there that made me really uncomfortable. That we're inviting people to Expo to come and have these chats with instructors, but then when you get here, there's no slots left because everybody has snapped them up already. So I would encourage you to kind of think about whether there's an equity there in that regard. I want to thank Corey for, I mean, she helped us register and she did so in a snap. You know, she was just amazing. You know, it was clear that staff had done absolutely the very best you could in a very difficult situation. Jen Boyce was going up and down the line trying to talk to people, Kat, I know you were doing the very same thing. You were trying to organize stuff, answer phones, emails, and it was an incredible effort on the part of staff, I thought, to try and deal with a very difficult situation. And I just really unfair of Civic Rec to have left you guys in that situation. So I just can't express my unhappiness with the service that we got from an important vendor on a very important day for us. Registration numbers were through the roof. It suggests to me that we're not offering enough camps. So I don't know if that is part of the possible expansion of what we're doing, but clearly we have a lot of people interested in what Pleasant Hill Rec has to offer in terms of summer programs. And so, you know, that might be something we look at too, some expansion of some of the programs to get more kids into it. Because I'd be interested in knowing what your wait lists look like. In addition to the registrations that you have, the wait list numbers, you know, will tell a tale as well.
Yeah, there's very few programs that have wait lists at this time.
It's the core ones that are the most important, unfortunately, but they're the hardest ones. The ones that people rely on for the summertime because they're working and this is an activity to, you know, for their children during their work day. And so those are the most important ones, and they're the ones that got waitlisted, got filled up really quickly. So, you know, maybe we just need to consider if we have the capability to do all of them.
Yeah, we're talking with, especially with over at Gregory Gardens, we're trying to get classrooms.
Yeah.
So that we can expand our numbers, but staffing is also a challenge. So we're going to work through that over the next few months.
Anyway, plaudits to you for the list of ideas that you guys have brainstormed. I think it's very comprehensive and very reflective of the grief that you guys faced that day. So applaud to all of you for everything that you did that day. It was handled as not only as best as it could, but better than how. So thank you all for that.
Well, it was a monumental, unexpected meltdown of Civic Rec. You know, staff had done everything because we had some issues last year, and you know, they said, well, you need to let us know so we can open up traffic. So we did. Staff worked with Civic Rec specifically on applying the discount so that it was done accurately. And so while you know it was a monumental meltdown, it is the first. Well, it was bad. It's the first issue we've had with Civic Rec, and you know, an understanding that you know the backbone of our registration and GL system is in the registration software system, and it's not just registering for camps; it's also facility rentals. And there aren't a lot of software companies in the recreation software space that do the things that we needed to do. And you know, we left our previous provider that not only was more expensive, but also didn't accurately report revenue and unearned revenue, and so we didn't have confidence in the numbers. I know you heard that from our previous finance manager on a frequent basis. So there are some pros and cons, and so while staff is trying to get answers and as well as you know potentially some restitution from Civic Rec on you know the fact that they didn't perform as they said they were going to. You know, they did acknowledge to Pat that their customer service on the day of broke down as well, that there was multiple breakdowns. I don't want to jump to we're going to get rid of Civic Rec. I need everyone to understand that you know that there are a lot of considerations, but if we can't get some resolution, then we will need to look at that option. But I have two very capable staff in technology in both Corey and Kat who understand the ins and outs. But at 9:05, we had wait lists and nobody enrolled. And so at that point in time, we had nobody, and so, we've never encountered it. As Kat said, it was multiple system errors, so. I just want, while we're all trying to crack, I just want to make sure that we don't go too fast.
Sandy.
I'll make my
Peripheral
comments
vision is
on,
limited.
yeah, on a positive note that day. Alan and I showed up about 10 o'clock and saw Nicole just as she was coming down the line, ran into Sandy and her grandson waiting patiently. And at that point, we were there just to see how it all worked. We had done this many years ago with our children. It's totally different these days. What we did after figuring out, that there was this major thing happening, but everybody seemed calm. I mean, they were doing what they needed to be doing. At that point, I didn't see any, I didn't see any gnashing of teeth or pulling hair out in line from our customers. But we got the opportunity to go around to the different booths and go to the room where some of the other folks that put on parts of the camps during the summer that you contract with. It was all awesome. Talked to people at the booth, some of the staff that was there, and met some of the instructors for some of the things, and they were all upbeat and happy to talk and just, oh yeah, we're gonna do this and this and this, and it was just delightful to hear all the exciting things that are going on in Pleasant Hill during the summer at these camps. So I highly recommend to anybody that has the opportunity to do that, whether you do the expo part separate or together again, that's in another year, but we'll hear about that. But it was wonderful. It was very, I just felt really happy about what the offerings were going to be. So even though this, the other stuff was going on, I thought, okay, well, it'll all get handled and it'll all be okay. And they all get to look forward to all these wonderful things that are going to happen during the summer. So thank you for that.
Which I think we can summarize is the preparation, the development of all the programs. I know that takes hours and hours, getting instructors, finding locations for all these camps. All of that takes a great deal of administration, and the offerings this year were really stellar. I mean, I meant to bring my book, even though it was going to get wet in the rain, but the volume and variety of things that were presented, as somebody has said, were just really awesome. What was distressing was to be waitlisted after waiting an hour and a half because we didn't go online because we didn't think we needed to. So that was a problem. But and Kat, thank you for personally calling, to talk about the wait list issue later on as well. I know that took time out of your day, and Susie as well for helping with the rearranging a camp. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with all of this camp stuff, and to have tip of the hat to everybody for that.
I also want to thank Susie and Corey too.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Yeah. That too, because I was told I don't project enough. So
Yes.
I don't do that. So I just wanted to thank Susie and Corey as well for stepping up, because I was actually away on conference, and so I had my day with the chaos because I was just looking at the screen, goes, oh, wait list. So it was one of those, what's going on over there? But the effort they took to rectify everything, I think, just speaks volumes to their dedication, not only to the district, but just to the residents in general. So thank you both for stepping up and doing that. I've also had a lot of comments from residents about just the breadth and the number of camps this year, especially from underrepresented groups that don't typically come to PHREC. And I've had a number of people come up to me saying, I saw in the Summer Camp Expo, they had a lot of stuff that we're interested in. And so I think it attracted groups that we don't historically attract. And so I want to commend staff for really making an effort to expand the number of programs. I think that was fabulous. And just as feedback, it attracted quite a bit of people. So that's great. And then again, just commending the staff in general, just for this humongous effort to try to rectify what's, essentially a tech meltdown over the next 6 or 7 days. I know that Susie and Corey reached out to me personally, but I can just imagine the number of outreaches she had to do to make sure everybody was happy and make sure everybody got at least something so that they can say they walk away with something. I think that was probably, unseen work that's probably underappreciated, but I want to make sure I call that out and commend all the staff for doing that. I'm in the camp of, I know, Michelle, that we don't want to throw everything out because Civic Rec might be the only game in town, but having registered for lots of different programs, not just at PH Rec, but I have my daughter registered for Water Creek and EB Rec and everything like that, and their software is different, and so no glitches, and nice countdown clock where you can kind of say, oh, it's counting down, so you know that you can get ready. You have to keep pushing refresh because the clock is there, tells you exactly where things are at, and you get your cart filled. And so whether you get it or not, it's sort of fairish, and so there's software out there that I think we should at least take a look at, even if we don't necessarily for us like that because of this. And then I do want to make a comment about sort of the equity issue around in-person versus online. I think you make a point that not everybody has access to technology, so they do have to come here. But I do remember a time when we could only get the discount if you came in person and not online. And so I sometimes work, and I've met people who were in different jobs who I swung by early in the morning, I got the discount, and I went off to work. And I know lots of people in different professions or jobs in which weekends is their work time. And so you also have to be careful about the equity, the opposite direction, where you force people to come to a place where they're not able to because of other obligations as well. And so I know it's a difficult balance to have, but I think having both options available is that it's somewhat fair that if you're not physically present, you can still register, and then vice versa as well, that if you're here, you should get an opportunity to register as well too. And then I do want to throw my support for the suggestion that maybe split it out with people who are residents of the district versus not, because residents of the district pay half our operating budget already, right? Tax. And so to get them to be able to access the services they've already paid for, in a sense, right? Because they were being taxed on it. They're adding additional revenue by choosing us to do that. They have lots of choices around here, and there's many different programs, and the fact they want to choose us, in addition to the taxes they already pay, I think we should give them an advantage as well too. So those who are living and paying taxes should have some sort of advantage to that as well.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we open public comment, any further comments?
I echo everybody's comments that have been made previously. I have to say it's hard for me to hide my frustration and disappointment with this situation because we had talked about it the previous board meeting that we felt like these systems were going to be ready to go, and unfortunately they weren't up to the task. So, but I wasn't here to experience it, and so. When talking with people afterwards, I had no idea of the technical glitches that had occurred. I was under the impression that it was due to the volume of interest in the campus, and there just wasn't enough availability of our offerings to be able to accommodate everybody. So it's good, and I'm not saying I'm disappointed with the staff, because I think you did a heroic job to kind of keep things together during this situation. But yeah, for me. The narrative that we provided people was just that there's so much interest, we just couldn't accommodate everybody. But I'm glad that there was a lot of variety of programs this year, because in some ways I think if people did see that programs were waitlisted, there were other opportunities for them, may have actually pushed them to try some different types of programs that they wouldn't have normally done. I like the options of solutions that you come up with in terms of perhaps splitting up the registration times. To make the flow a little bit better than having it all at one time. That's about all I think.
Thank you, Derek. Okay. Any members of the public wish to speak on this issue? Yeah, that are in person? Seeing none. Susie, do we have any emails? Michelle, any raised hands?
No raised hands.
No, okay.
And no emails.
I'm sorry, thank you. I just saw the head shake, so I assumed that was the case. Okay, then we'll close public comment on that, and unless there's anything further, Katrina, thank you. Thank you to all staff again for what was truly a heroic effort on all of your parts. Yeah. And Nicole, I didn't give you a shout out, but I should have, because you were out there working the line just as much as anybody else.
I mean, my hands are off.
I think I even said a bad word to you.
No, it was great. I'm just real proud of everyone's effort that day and keeping water pressure. Nice to know Sandy, he came and did, he felt everyone was calm, I felt the same as much as they could be, but yeah, it was a stressful one. And
And a few days.
and stuff. We're getting through it.
All right. Item number 5 is our consent calendar. And is there any, let's see, the consent calendar includes to approve bills to be paid and the minutes of February 9th, 2023. Any questions, comments, pulling of any of these items? See, oh, yes, please.
Just one, just for the minutes, I was wondering if I could request consistency in how the names are done, whether it's first or last name, it's kind of a mixture of different things. So.
If there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll move the consent calendar.
A second? Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair Vincent and seconded by, I'm trying to get these words out. Board Member Derek, worst, excuse me, to approve the consent calendar. All in favor? Aye. 5-0. With some technical cleanup that Secretary Kui has requested. Action items are item number 6.1 to authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Social Equity Lab for diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting services for a 5-month contract not to exceed $75,000 and authorize transfer of $75,000 from the general fund to the CIP fund to pay for it. Michelle, can we have a management report to begin with?
Have a report. So since 2017, the district has made a concerted effort to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI values, into the work of our Rec and Park district. The board has set clear direction that implementing DEI values into providing the providing of services by employees to our community is a high priority. Key staff and I have immersed ourselves in training opportunities. We became a member of GARE, and we work with those cohort communities, learning from other agencies that have embarked on this work, including cohorts like Consumers Community Services District, who has done a lot of work in this realm. As we've learned from others via trainings or conversations, staff has begun operationalizing the inclusion policy. But it at times seems that we're trying things that we've learned, and it may seem like we're throwing spaghetti at a wall approach, which is well-intentioned and a step in the right direction, but it's now time to use an expert to assist with ensuring that we are not performative in our DEI efforts. And that our efforts, while we've made strides, we've implemented the DEI committee, we've done a lot of things, as I mentioned in the report, on making sure that we have representation in our marketing efforts and making sure that we're broadly reaching out to underrepresented communities in employment applications. So there are a whole bunch of things that we have done, but these efforts have not been without their detractors, both internally and externally. It seems sometimes when we make a step forward, we implement something, we get feedback on that. And so implementation can be difficult if staff does not have the expertise to be confident in their approach. And supporting staff with someone knowledgeable in the DEI field is of utmost importance. We seem to be at an important crux in our DEI efforts here at the district. We've gotten direction from the board. We've done some self training, and, you know, leaning on others that have done this work and trying to implement things. But, you know, there are a lot of difficult conversations. There's information that we don't have, and we're all just learning. And so we, you know, are making our best efforts, but every time, you know, we seem to do something, there's feedback, which we learn from and we change, which has been great. But it has caused employees to start questioning whether or not they want to implement things. And the last thing that I want is a performative DEI inclusion policy, and for us not to operationalize this. So the utmost importance to me at this time, I want to make sure that we continue to make strides with the staff and that it's a positive experience in the culture within our organization. So staff needs expert assistance in the following areas: operationalizing the inclusion policy that was set by the board of directors, including identifying steps, goals, timelines, and metrics. The policy was set by the board, but operationalizing that is staff work, but we need some assistance. Setting up of the internal DEI committee that will assist with not only the implementation of the plan and ongoing culture shift in the organization. We need assistance with that. In those, some of those issues include staff understanding their roles, pushback from peers, not wanting to get it wrong, and really kind of understanding how they support the inclusion policy and the work in this realm. And then coaching key management staff on changing the culture of the organization to be inclusive and implementing programs with an equity lens. I've been looking for a DEI consultant to assist with these goals to move us forward, operationalizing the policy, setting up the structure and coaching, and setting up the structure of the DEI committee and coaching the management staff. The Social Equity Lab, I found a firm that can do all three and continue to provide training and other ongoing support should be further engaged in additional services as we implement the plan. The proposal provided by Melanie Graham at Social Equity Lab covers all three of the areas that I have identified needing assistance. The proposal includes development of a DEI strategic plan that will operationalize the inclusion policy by designing a plan that will outline the goals, objectives, performance measures, and staff assignment. This plan will be a 3-year plan that will serve as a roadmap for staff to implement the inclusion policy and shift organizational culture. Developing a structure for the internal DEI committee, which will include identifying a clear purpose and goals, membership makeup, and provide structure to monitor and report ongoing DEI efforts and identify areas of exclusion or barriers. The DEI committee will hold the organization accountable on the strategic plan and will assist in its implementation. And then coaching staff, including key leadership positions on the readiness of understanding DEI in the workplace. All of our staff members are at various points in their understanding of DEI and the roles and responsibilities in creating an inclusive workplace. So one-on-one and work group coaching is a key component of the long-term success in our DEI implementation efforts. Understanding long-held traditions in our workplace and dismantling some of those that are barriers to inclusion and belonging in the workplace is highlighted in the proposal provided by Social Equity Lab. Other proposals that I've seen with other cities and consultant contracts have not included the element on coaching. And I believe that based on the current culture of our district, setting up intentional coaching for work groups and individuals is paramount for us to making lasting cultural changes and implementing our DEI values. I'm requesting approval of the proposed cost of $75,000 for an estimated 5 months. Is a significant investment. I understand that I'm asking the board for a significant investment, but in talking with colleagues in cohorts like GARE and in other cities that have done this work, the consensus cost for DEI strategic plan is $100,000 and above. This proposal is unique in that it not only includes a strategic plan, but also includes operationalizing the DEI committee and coaching staff. After meeting Melanie, I believe she and her team are in a position to start immediately working with our team, and her experience working within government agencies will provide a great foundation for assisting us with this work. I did receive a question about the number of hours included in the proposal, and I had followed up, and the number of hours total is 407. Various different tasks identified, and the hourly rate is at $200 an hour. So for an estimated original proposal estimated at $81,000. I had worked with Melanie to bring that number down, So we're getting 407 hours of work for 75,000 members. So that is where we are on that. I think it's important for us to move forward expeditiously and get us moving in the right direction. I've seen some starts and stops. I've seen employees have some frustration. I've seen some long-held beliefs in employees that need to be changed. And I want to make sure that we're successful in this amongst the employees, especially the DEI committee. Michael was here. He served on that DEI committee. He's fantastic. He's got a lot of enthusiasm and energy, and I don't want that committee to run into resistance and not understand their role. I've done the best that I can in the learning that I've done. I've received comments from board members that they have talked to other experts, and I just need to let the board understand that we are not experts, and so we need expert help. And that's where we are. I know that I didn't go out for a formal RFP. I talked to a number of different consultants. Melanie was the one that when I talked to her, she was able to get all of the components, including starting with the inclusion policy. Many of the consultants, a couple of consultants I talked to before wanted to start over on the policy, and they didn't want to use the work that we had already done. And so I think it's important to honor the work that the board has already done in that inclusion policy and springboard from that and operationalize that. So with that, I'll take any questions. And Nicole is the chair of the DEI committee, so she also may have some comments at some point in time.
All right, we'll start with questions. First, Michelle, on this proposal. Then we'll go to public comment and then bring it back to the board for discussion. So you may have fewer questions than you have comments. You may have more questions than you have comments. Derek.
Yeah, I just had one question about the DEI committee. It references that, but I didn't know the makeup of that committee and if it was open for people who are
No, it's an employee committee. So the DEI committee is an employee committee. So the board doesn't have an external DEI advisory committee to the board. So the DEI committee is internal to employees. So it's an employee committee similar to our safety committee and our spirit committee. And 2 other committees. So which is typical to how most of the organizations that are doing this work have an internal DEI committee that really focuses on organizational culture as well as all of the implementation of any strategic plan, because a lot of it's all staff work. And so, so that is.
Yeah, because to follow up, I was just curious about having somebody with an outside perspective, be a member of that committee, just so that there aren't any sort of biases, because they're all part of the same organization.
Yeah, it's really a committee that supports the work of the staff, and as well as challenges the work of the staff, right? So that the employees on that committee, they're probably going to be the most versed in helping to identify barriers, identifying inequities amongst work groups, opportunities for different groups in our recreational programming, and so that's what the purpose of that is.
Can I add something? I was just going to say, in terms of inviting other people to the committee, our committee actively is looking for a way groups to collaborate with, not necessarily to have them be part of our committee, but to have a meeting with them or to somehow further our knowledge in certain areas. So we're actively seeking out certain new groups, not necessarily inviting employees.
Other questions at this time?
Sort of along the same lines, and all the work then will be internally focused for this particular contract. So all sort of internal operations, not necessarily external.
Well, yeah, all internal operations to externally communicate. So, so the inclusion policy is, you set out the goal, what you want to see the staff do, basically. And so we need to operationalize that. We need to have a plan to do that. some of that is going to be communicating that out and identifying, the metrics that we're using and all of that. So it's all staff work internally on being able to implement that inclusion policy. So yes, and well as no. So I mean, it's
Yes.
staff work, but it's also going to be communicated out.
I can certainly see, I'll say my comments earlier, but the other question I have was this particular contract is for the entire duration of 5 months. Are there any sort of check-ins somewhere in between that to ensure that we're getting the deliverables we need and?
Yeah.
And
Yes, yeah,
do we need any off ramps or do we for that the entire 5-month contract?
No, we're going to use we'll use our standard professional services contract, which gives us an off ramp at any point in time. But yeah, so that is what we're using is the professional services contract.
Thank you.
Is the work scope such that the coaching goes beyond the whatever team, and I'll have comments later on what the team is, on the team, so that it's not, so that the services are focused on the spread of the culture that we're looking for, as opposed to simply coaching 4 or 5 people and expecting them to have the authority or the ability to spread that through this culture that we want to. I mean, how's that? There's a lot of unclarity.
It's a combination. Within the task, we have focus groups within the employee groups. So focus groups with different ethnic and diverse groups of individuals, work groups. So there's some group work. There's some individual coaching. Melanie and I will work specifically on, hey, here are some of the issues. Maybe she'll be coaching, my superintendent team, and then, she'll coach the management team, and she'll coach, the coordinators. And so, so it's something that we will develop together and exactly who is going to be involved in the coaching, but I expect it to touch all of our employees. All of our employees, at least full-time employees, will be involved in this process in some way, not just the DEI committee. And I've always been the proponent that this needs to be internalized, and it needs to be internalized throughout our organization. And so the only way we're going to do that is if we involve everybody in this process. And so they'll all be involved in the input, the development of the recommendations on the strategic plan, and timelines and all of that. Some of them will be more intimately involved, but everyone will be touched by this process, and everyone will receive some kind of training and counseling, as well as ongoing training plans. Whether that, one of the things that may come out of this is that we need to do, quarterly trainings, and some of those might be unconscious bias or microaggressions. And, there are lots of things that we can operationalize and add into a strategic plan and timeline that's going to help us shift the culture.
So, it's clear to me, Michelle, that this is not a 5-month project. That we're not just going to do 5 months of this stuff and then have our consultant leave and then we don't have to do anything in order to sustain this, because we're talking about cultural shifts in a large group of people that are largely homogenous, and who all of us, I think, need to, expand our horizons, expand our understanding of what it's like to stand in someone else's shoes, and think like that, not just be exposed to ideas. So do you have, are you in agreement that this is not really just a 5-month, this is a relationship that we're going to be calling on this person for quite some time, I think, from time to time, to come in and do re-coaching or retrainings or new ideas or whatever.
I do believe that, this is an initial process to get us, to it's gonna be a 3-year strategic plan, and we're gonna need to update it, and, we're gonna need continual coaching, and so, Melanie, she does implementation and ongoing training, so, but this is the initial work of getting us off the ground, and then we'll probably, I would probably say that on an ongoing budgetary basis, I would be budgeting some money to continue this type of work on an ongoing basis, but this is the initial kind of, here's the big chunk. We need to get the initial really hard work done, and then we'll keep the ongoing maintenance of that and making sure it moves forward, because the last thing I want is a performative, is us talking about DEI and it's being performative and us not delivering. And so, so that's what I think.
As you know, you and I discussed this, that there are no references here. We don't have any word from others that have used this particular person and company to do their DEI training, and what worked, what succeeded, what didn't, the organization and all of that. That would also be a way for us to sort of be able to budget for the future based on others' experiences, that we don't have that information before us. But do you have a sense of maybe we're talking about 50% of this on a kind of a standing budget item going forward for a couple of years until we kind of get a sense of where we're at, or is that too little?
I don't think I really don't have a number for you, but I think that if we budgeted, on an ongoing basis, a third of this for DEI efforts, whatever those may be, that will go a long way in us continuing that process. But I don't have a dollar amount for you until I kind of get a sense of, how far are we from our metrics? How much work do we have to make up? Part of this struggle has been, what are the metrics? We've gotten Placer AI, for some of our casual, informal spaces, I can get a breakdown by diversity and ethnicity and, including economics. So I can get a lot of that information, but I don't even know, where to start on some of that. So somebody having that expertise, and then, so once we have our strategic plan and we know how far away we are on our metrics, I will have a better idea of how much ongoing support we may need. But right now, I don't know what I don't know. It's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Jerry, did I say Jerry? Bobby. Excuse me, I don't know where that came from.
On the, you break down the 3 deliverables, is there a break, the 400 plus hours, is there a breakdown of kind of where the concentration is on those 3? Then I have a follow-up question.
Ask your follow-up question on that.
So the follow-up question is, so it's broke down pretty well on the DEI strategic plan and then the DEI committee restructure on what some of those deliverables are, but on the coaching, there isn't that. So I've had questions on what that entails, because I think that's I think they're all important.
Right.
For me, that's a huge component.
Right. Yeah, and Bobby, I have these in individual tasks. If the board wants more information before making a decision, I can come back and.
I think maybe I'm looking at it and maybe try to, leave the, $75,000. One, I have question is, $75,000 5 months, is that enough and enough time to do, what needs to be done? Because just as I think you've articulated very well. I mean, while we all think we have an idea on what this entails, we actually have no idea what this entails. That's why we need to get somebody in here to help us out on it. So, that's one question: is that enough? And then 2, where I'm trying to go with if the breakdown of the cost, trying to get an understanding to your point, where we go from here. Is the bulk of the cost on the coaching, or is the bulk of the cost on the development of a strategic plan? Because I see in the development of the strategic plan, setting up the committee, it's a lot. There's a lot of time. 15 one-on-one interviews, focus groups, all stuff that's important. I'm just trying to get an idea kind of where we go from here, because, you know, when we look at next steps, recommendations, or continued growth and self-evolution that's gonna come out of the coaching, I think that's where like a big component of success of this going forward. But again, that's my comments, not knowing what I don't, you know, know what I don't know.
Not knowing what you.
Well, a related comment that a question that I would have to that is, I know in your conversations with the consultant that you're proposing here this evening, that, you know, these deliverables have come out. I had a hard time really following, you know, sort of the intangibleness of them, to know, you know, really what this looks like on the ground. Where was my comment going? You talked to in talking with her, did you have a chance, and as she formulated these suggested approaches, to talk about the challenges that you have been running into?
Yes, yeah,
So
we
that,
had a
to Bobby's point, you know,
Mhm.
the structural piece of it, I have some comments about the structural piece in a minute. But the structural piece of it may be, and the one-on-one interviews may be less important than in creating the culture than the coaching might be.
Well,
In terms of sustainability.
Again, if I can on that, I mean, I equate this, you and I have those same questions, but then I gotta take a step back, because it's that same thing that, you know, when we were picking out tile for the senior center bathrooms. And I mean, I got a rhetoric degree, and you know, you got a law degree, and we're questioning the design consultant, you know, so it's the same kind of, I don't know. Where I'm challenged, and maybe to kind of go a step further, is, you know, to your point, it's like typically when we get proposals, we've worked with, you know, we've done this in all these jurisdictions, we've worked with these other things. This seems more, I mean, amazing credentials, but.
yeah, and I got a reference from a couple of colleagues of mine that have utilized social equity lab. And you know, with in East Bay Cal cities, as well as, you know, Melanie sent me a couple of reference letters for a couple of nonprofits she's worked with. But you know, we to answer Sandy's question about the challenges, I've had multiple very frank conversations with Melanie about what my challenges are. Nicole and I met with her about, you know, hey, here is what we're encountering. And, you know, part of it was, you know, are we, you know, too damaged to figure out? And, you know, so, you know, I'm like, are we going to, she's like, no, you're pretty much where everyone else is when they're at this point. And so, you know, we talked about the, you know, the structure and what the board wants to see, and, you know, kind of what we've implemented to date. So I think, you know, she's aware of the challenges. She's gonna understand more when she meets people, and she meets with the DEI committee, and, you know, it starts talking to focus groups. You know, she'll get a better understanding of, you know, what all of those challenges might be that even I don't see right now, right? So, you know, because she's has worked in this realm before, so and is much more knowledgeable than I am. And so, Bobby, just kind of looking at the breakdown, the coaching hours is about 20% you know, and that doesn't include the coaching in the DEI committee. The DEI committee is also, you know, the bulk of setting up that, working with them on mission and values and structure, and who can be on the committee and how they should work and what information they should be gathering from the work groups. All of that is also coaching, in addition to just setting it up. Because, you know, what I liked about Melanie and her approach was that she wasn't going to come in and say, well, this is what I've done in other cities, and we're going to, or in other agencies, and we're going to implement what I've already done. This is the strategic plan. And so it's going to be very organic to where our employees are and what we need. So that is one of the reasons why, you know, when I met with Melanie, I heard her speak, and I met with Melanie and discussed our challenges. I was very confident, and I am very confident, that she can deliver what we need in this process. And I'll be honest, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what that is. You know, like I think I'll know it when I see it, because I know I want something actionable that I can share with the board and say, this is what we're doing, and give you the ongoing updates that you've requested. And so and I want a strong DEI committee, and I want the employees to be empowered to identify barriers and to identify things that need to be changed for our residents as well as employees. So, so some of it is field, Bobby, as far as, my conversations with Melanie, in addition to the recommendations I got from.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. Seeing that it's one that the coaching component is 20%, less concerned, if that was 80%, probably be more interested in a breakdown of what that entailed, but since it's 20, I think it's pretty, you can do the math within the hours and how many hours is devoted to that. I would appreciate that.
And while I'm answering questions, if the board has any questions that I do have Melanie Graham here tonight, Social Equity Lab. So if there's anything that you want to ask her specifically, she is here. So I wanted to acknowledge that she's here tonight.
Any other questions before we open public comment? Quick.
So this is more of a question about our equity and inclusion policy. When you were going around asking about or talking with other potential consultants or with Melanie, since that's going to be our foundation, were there particular issues with how that was constructed that may filter through with our efforts that we need to rectify first, or did we?
I think we'll rectify those on the way. Melanie did take a look at it. She said it's a great start. She may have some recommendations on some additional wording or changes, but she thought that it was a great foundation to move us forward. So it may be parallel. She may have some recommendations that we bring back to the board in changing that policy to be able to make it easier to operationalize or if we're missing anything.
So I guess I would, my one observation on what you're saying there, Michelle, is that this may, that what you're let me ask you in the form of a question, are you recommending an approach that doesn't, now I'll have to get to comments because it's much more a comment than it is. Yes, go ahead. You inspired one, but then I lost it, and then I realized it wasn't a question, it was an observation.
So I guess with the contract that are a little bit larger or have some weightiness to it, we sometimes get presentations from the potential consultants themselves. And because I think we're sort of still grappling our unknowns, and we're just trying to base our decision just on what's described in the text. And we don't have the sort of advantage you have in terms of the discussions you already had with Melanie. Would a presentation to the board ease some of those questions that we're having, or do you feel that this is enough information for us to go off of?
I don't know. If the board would like a presentation, I'm sure Melanie will be here to answer questions. But it's hard because this is staff work, and the reason why I'm here is because we didn't budget this amount, right? So if I had budgeted $100,000 in our budget last year for a consultant, then it would be, we've already budgeted this amount. The staff is doing staff work, and we'd let the board know when we approve the contract. But now it's a budget, basically a budget amendment as well as approving the contract. And so I don't, I don't know. I kind of let the proposal stand on its own, and have Melanie here for questions and comments. But if that's something the board would like,
I'd love to answer any questions. I think some of the things that were brought up, pardon me if I'm talking out of turn, but I think some of the things that were brought up were absolutely valid, and I welcome any question and inquiry about the approach and what was written that comes from.
It may be that a presentation is a good idea, just to be able to move beyond sort of the, really the cut. Well, cotton candy sounds disparaging. I don't mean it that way, but it's airy. It's difficult. It's difficult to kind of put our feet on the ground about it and whether it meets the board's goals. Because I think we'll talk in a minute about what our goals are, whether we think this proposal meets those goals or not, or whether there's more we would like to see developed. Anyway, that's.
Well, since Melanie's here, can I ask her to come up and give some observations?
Well, I'd kind of like to just wait a second until maybe we get into some board discussion about that, and then it might generically come up or organically come up that would be appropriate.
I agree with where you're headed.
Okay, great.
All right.
Since she's here, I just want to make sure that, that you have any questions.
I appreciate that. So I appreciate you being here as well. All right, if there's no other questions at this point, let's open up for any public comment from the audience. None? Oh, Chris?
I don't know much about this. I'm also
This is Chris Petlock, our
Chris Petlock, Community Services Manager of the district. So do a lot of work with human resources, but I don't know much about this, but I can say in private companies, I had the privilege of being involved with a lot of mergers and acquisitions. We can when we buy a company, then we'd have to integrate them. I can do the systems, I can tell you how to sell things, this is the way we do it. The hardest part was always bringing those companies, those people into the culture, changing the culture of their organization into our organization. I don't know if that was happening here. We're looking for a culture change. I can tell you it's always the most difficult and sometimes the most expensive thing. And I don't mean like hard dollar costs, but a lot of times soft dollar costs, quiet quitting, before that was even really a thing, people not happy or disgruntled with their work because we're putting something on them they don't want to have happen. And then of course here in this organization, I come in, same sort of thing. We're doing new systems, we create the accounting, we kind of do all these other things. And again, those in my mind might look hard, or they're easy to me, but they're hard for other people to pick up with. But again, we're looking to change the culture of the organizations. People don't like change. It's very difficult for people to do, especially if it's internal change. So,
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Any email comments, Susie?
No, we have not received any emails.
Michelle, any raised hands?
No raised hands.
No raised hands. We'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. We'll start.
I think, my big thing was always, trust in you and what you need internally to succeed. And, I know this is something that we've talked about, but, what we've considered, a lot of time and energy into, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just a lift on what needs to be done. My real concern is that I feel like we have so far to go. And so to me, 5 months and $75,000 might not be, the last thing I think what I heard from everybody here is the last thing we want to do is slap our name on a DEI strategic plan and do some coaching and say, hey, we get a gold star or something. We need to have something that has some longevity and gets us going. So that's my only, $75,000 is, based on what we do here is a lot of money. And the way I look at it, the other side of that is it's not a whole lot of money in what, a lot of organizations are doing with, this is like have a full-time staff person that we do. So, having somebody come in and get us going, that is just my own, I'm 100% supportive of this. I think it's fantastic. I would like to see as we move forward, probably more in depth of, before it gets rolling along, kind of what we can expect over the next 5 months in more detail. But to me, it's just more of, is this enough? Like, I look at this as tier 1, what's tier 2, 3, 4, and 5? And I know that we'll find that out as we go along. But it's just more of making sure that this isn't just which I know it's not, an exercise of lip service, that it actually has some teeth to it. I know that, and again, I put my faith, our faith, 100% in your recommendation, and so. I'm excited. I mean, I think this is unbelievably exciting. I guess the last thing I would say, this has been asked and answered a couple of times, is, you mentioned that you had a conversation with Melanie in advance of this, in advance of this proposal. That's, what kind of, can of worms is she gonna open, and what does that then 75 become 150 real quick, or are we just, so I think that's more of my, like, I like what's here. I mean, the fact that the coaching component is 20%, that makes more sense to me with the development of a strategic plan and the structure in place. And then to me, it's like the coaching is kind of the last, as we look at how we do projects, maybe that might, I worry that might get cut out at some point because the other stuff might go a little longer. I don't know. But I think that's a huge component that works to me, which is why I'd also like to see some more breakdown as we go forward, what the coaching looks like, that coaching component. I just, again, to me, this is something that I have no experience in, no expertise in, and so I put my faith 100% in Michelle and our consultant. I think it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to learning a ton through this. And so, anyway, awesome.
You can speak again at the end, further if you need to. So, Sandy.
I'm also surprised. I've read it probably 2.5 times. It took me, I went through it first and I thought, okay, there's a lot here. So I went through it again, and then I started to go through it again because and I think that's what's going to happen with the whole process anyway. I think it's going to start hopefully in April for 5 months, if that's what we approve. And I think then at some point, maybe not so much after the first month, but probably into the second month, there's going to be either some shifting or some realization that maybe more effort here and things are going to change here. I think this is going to be an evolving situation. Maybe it's 20% on coaching right now, but that's towards the end. But if it gets there, it could be more or less. I don't think we know, and I can tell just from which I thought the proposal for this type of work, which to me is not something you can really hardcore put. We're going to do this, and in this time frame. It's an approach that is going to change several times. I think Michelle is going to be the point of contact. I believe there's a point of contact with the DEI committee. I believe that's what I was reading. And it's interesting to me, and I think it's an exciting time for this because, back in 2017, there was the statement that was made by the board. After that, there was the DEI policy and the other documents, the resolution, and we did some things that were great things. But now, to me, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is actually starting to internalize what those words say. It's not, the words don't mean anything if you don't believe them and if you don't let your actions reflect what those words say. So I'm looking forward to getting more information, and there'll be a couple steps back and hopefully more steps further. But I think this type of contract and somebody that is experienced in these kinds of group activities will be extremely helpful to the staff and ultimately to us. And as a result, the programs that we put on for this district and the public that we serve. So I'm looking forward to it, and I do support it, and I'm looking forward to seeing reports as it goes forward. I think it's going to be exciting.
Others. Derek.
Yeah, so You know, I'm actually really excited about this. You know, I can understand, you know, where the staff is at currently, with their efforts and the need to bring an outside consultant to take it to the next level. I totally get that, you know, and having someone who comes in with the knowledge and, you know, outside perspective to help, advance our strategic plan. I guess, you know, I don't look at it as like this investment over 5 years. I mean, the strategic
5
plan,
months.
or 5 months, sorry, 5 months. Where I was going with that is that you're looking at really a strategic plan that will guide us for the next several years. And this is just that first investment, you know, to get us there. But with that said, you know, I don't want it to be, you know, something just for appearance's sake. It's a strategic plan that we put on the shelf and it doesn't have any sort of actionable, you know, kind of outcomes or recommendations. And with that, like Michelle said, we don't exactly yet know what our metrics are. You know, how are we going to be able to judge the effectiveness of our shift after 3 years? That's the one thing I want to make sure that we get out of this assignment is that if we are embarking on a strategic plan, that we have something pretty clearly defined that we're looking to achieve, and we can look back in 3 years' time and say, that was the best investment, you know, because we know where we stood then and where we are now. And we have a real way to look back and say, you know, it was worth the investment. And if there's subsequent investments, I'm on board for that, you know, additional coaching, things like that in phases if necessary. But I understand it's an uncharted territory for us, you know, and it's not as if there's a whole lot of, you know, guidance in this area. I think that's why we need a consultant on board. It's a bit of an evolutionary process. But overall, I'm excited about this opportunity and supportive of it.
Thank you. Wait, do you have any comments or observations?
Yeah, maybe some initial comments. Kind of building off what Derek just said. I don't necessarily think we need to look back to say this is worth it. I could say it's worth it now, right? That this is an important step to do. And I think all of the steps that we've taken were huge steps, but really tiny portions of the journey that we have to go on. You know, there was the proclamations and resolutions, and I feel that the work that was put into the policy, this was just sort of stakes that were going toward a much bigger next step. And this is the next step. So I'm actually excited about this. Because each of our other steps, even though they're just part of a small journey, I think did result in tangibles. You know, I've been reporting that when I first put it on the board, there were groups that clearly didn't want anything to do with PH Ragnar Park. They did not feel welcomed here, period. But 2 years into the board, I'm reporting, oh, you know, people are looking at things saying, wow, great programs, and the staff are more welcoming and messaging is more welcoming. The fact that we published a policy, I can't say the same for our local governance partners in the surrounding area, right? I think even though we're tiny, this is actually probably a leap forward as compared to many of our surrounding partners. This is a bigger step than I think anybody has taken in the surrounding area. So the fact that we're doing it, I think says a lot about our commitment and efforts to make this a better place. And so I'm supportive of moving forward. I have the same sort of general concerns about 5 months and 75,000. No, is that, how do we sort of sustain that? I myself would like the presentation, not so much to say that I want to approve it. That type of thing. I think I'm supportive of it. I think the presentation would be more help us as a board to sort of understand what you got to understand, Michelle. Kind of get that advantage of, okay, where do we kind of think we're going, so that we feel comfortable with it. I will call it an investment because we have to explain it as well to our constituents when we invest this much money. I want to be able to say it in a way that actually makes sense. And so I think a presentation just for information and not necessarily to convince us that this is important or that we should be spending money toward that. I think sounds like we're all supportive. But I think we would like to have just some information so that we can feel comfortable with going back to our constituents and letting them know that we're taking this step so that we can be a better district, a better place to work, and a better sort of partner with the community to ensure that everybody feels welcome. So that was my reason why I wanted the presentation. Yeah, that's my want to say. Thank you.
I think what we're all saying is we want this to be successful. And that we don't want this to be a slapdash, and we don't want it to be checking off boxes. And that we're disappointed. Not so much that staff doesn't have the expertise to do this, because we absolutely understand that this is a whole quantum different than what Rec and Park people get together to do. Not disappointed with that, but disappointed that there are challenges that still exist that I've heard about from at least 3 different sources about resistance in the staff to making this cultural change. And that troubles me a lot about what the success of this is going to be. In the reading that I've done about how to get involved in it with a DEI consultant, it's very important for the organization to set its goals. And I think the goals that we've been talking about here are both embedded in our policy, a written policy, as well as in the statements that we've been speaking about this evening. And our understanding that this isn't just a short-term relationship that we're going to enter into here. This is one that I think we all acknowledge is going to take some repetition and some time in order to really create the community that we want, which is not just a layer of DEI. It's not frosting. We want to integrate these concepts into our culture, so that it becomes automatic, that we don't think differently any longer. We think in the way that we're being coached to think. So the question that I have is this proposal striking that goal? One of the main concerns I think that I have is not with the structure. I mean, I do understand that a strategic plan is something that every consultant is going to do, and it is to a certain extent a box we have to check. But I don't want so much the emphasis to be on the deliverable of a report as a deliverable of changed hearts and minds. And that's what I don't know whether this relationship achieves that or not in the way it's structured. So I'd like to just make sure that everyone who's listening here understands that what we as a board want and expect of our staff is the implementation of our policy. That this is not a choice. This is not discretionary. This is mandated from all of us to all of the staff, from top to bottom, about what we expect in terms of helping people feel that they belong. We have kind of an unusual situation here in that we have employer-employee issues to think about. We have internal employee-to-employee discrimination type issues to think about. We have the development of our outreach to our public to think about in terms of discriminatory conduct, and an opening up of our thought processes to the programs and the facility uses that we have here. So it's pretty far reaching. It's not just about who we hire, although I think that's a huge part of it, the piece that we're missing. But it's not just about whether employees agree with each other about whether someone belongs or not, or how they treat each other. It's far more reaching than that, what we have going on here. And so I just want to make sure that the goals that we set, which is the implementation, I don't like the word operationalize. I'd like it to be, let's culture change. Let's embed it in everything that we do. That kind of approach to it all. I do honestly think that we need to be prepared to spend a sum of money beyond what's been proposed here, because I don't think 5 months is going to be enough to get us the deliverable of a strategic plan for what it's worth, and help our consultant coach the various levels of employee staff that we have to get to the point where we believe that we have really made a change. So I think it's going to take some ongoing relationship with the person that we consult with. I'm not so troubled about metrics and measurables because it's so intangible, those kinds of things, that I wouldn't want to rely on that so much as I would want to see it sort of lived. You know what I mean by that? Yeah.
I only see this as a seed, chapter 2 or 3 of a long novel.
Yeah.
And so I hear what you're saying, definitely, and I have the same concerns that you're right. It's about the culture change, and it's not going to happen in chapter 2 or chapter 3.
Yes.
But this is a good step. At least it starts.
This is an investment in that goal. But I want to couple it also with some concerns that I shared with Michelle about the organizational aspects of how we are planning to move forward. Right now, for those of you that don't know, I didn't know it myself, but I did know that the committee structure had been kind of a revolving door thing where some people were in and then they left and somebody else came in. So it kind of failed because of lack of continuity and lack of sustainability in the committee itself. This is, for those of you who don't know, is a committee of employees. It's like the Spirit Committee. It's a voluntary committee. And I don't personally think that it should be a voluntary committee. I think it should be an administrative committee with people assigned as part of their work to be part of this committee and to be part of the solution. So because I'm just concerned that some kind of voluntary thing, next second, Michelle, this kind of voluntary thing is, it may work organically, but it hasn't worked so far for us. And I wouldn't want this investment in our wanting to reach a goal to fail because it lacked the oomph behind it. So one of my things would be that yes, it could have employees on it, but I do believe that it should be largely employees. I think our general manager should be part of it, and that is the thing that is going to enable those employees to spread the word and to make the difference. I don't think just being a committee, a voluntary committee, gives them the credentials to be able to speak with authority about things. You have a response to that?
Well, there is, a committee restructure as part of the scope of this, and I think that kind of falls under the purview of this assignment.
Well, I don't think that it is is it still voluntary?
No, it wasn't voluntary, so I don't know where in our communication that was miscommunicated. We have 3 employee committees, and I take and I assign employees to each of those committees and make sure that each work group is represented. And so I ask all the employees to rank where they want to be, and then I do the makeup of each of those committees. And so, that and this hasn't had people coming on and off that just started it this year. Like it's literally been like 5 months. Like October was our very first meeting, and we're moving forward with that. But part of the scope, as board member Worth said, is really looking at that committee structure and identifying the best makeup for that in the terms, and whether that's a permanent committee or we have rotating terms. But I need to because we took our cue from some cohorts that have done this, and so I followed their lead. But I've asked Melanie to look at that and to make recommendations because she has implemented that in other organizations, and so so that is part of the scope.
So the assignments that you're describing are actual work assignments to people.
Yes, they are work assignments,
and people can't just voluntarily say, I don't want to participate anymore. Okay, at least without chatting with you about good reasons and stuff like that. Okay, so there is some solidity there to that goal. Good, I really welcome that. Bobby, you're live.
I also want us to be careful about putting parameters in place that, you know, the consultant that we're paying, and they come back just as, you know, Secretary Tran made a comment about our existing policy. You know, will that be changed? And if that may be changed, you know, they may be shelved, and we may have a complete new, committee structure, maybe voluntary. I don't know. It may be mandatory, but I mean, I have no background in organizational, you know, anything other than being on this board. So coaching girls softball. So I'm looking forward to getting more. You know, back to your point. You know, about making kind of making sure that we get out of this. You know, what we're putting into it, and I think what I'm getting from you is from everybody is that top down, bottom up, however you want to call it, that everybody's on it. Everybody, it's clear that to everybody that this is a priority for the district. And I think to that point, if you talk about we were reactionary after Charleston, we were reactionary after George Floyd murder. To me, this, while it's still reactionary, this is more proactive. Has more of that feel, where it's not something that we're just doing at a point in time to show that we feel one way or the other. This is more of a, hey, we need to be better and we need to evolve and get on board or get out, kind of an attitude. So I'm excited. I mean, I think everybody's.
I come from a fairly large organization, and I've had my share of difficulties, as a woman. And so all the strategic plans in the world are not going to change the hearts and minds of, some of the people that I work with. But the coaching aspect of it, the one-on-one, the putting script into people's, mouths about how to say and what to do. Having people hear what they're saying, and how it's heard by others. I think it's just a really, really important part of this. It's why I think that we're in for the long haul here, and that we need to be.
And that goes to the organic, you get into these one-on-ones, and then Melanie finds out from, people say things to her that they wouldn't say to us or Michelle, and they start finding out, hey, we got this is a problem. It may open up again. So, then it kind of goes back to your point, it goes this way and it goes this way, and but ultimately it's over.
I might say one thing too. I just was, kind of getting back to what Michelle said. This would have been, staff directed if it had been budgeted for initially. And I'm almost thinking, this is just to help us get started. But I'd like to see, since we're in sort of that budget, cycle and preparing for the outlook, that we might allocate budget for this type of activity in a coaching fashion going forward, or something along those lines, because I think that would be worth.
In the budgeting process, we would have had this conversation then, because of the, the allocation of the funds.
Yeah, so I almost feel like, although we're here right now, it may be a moot point when it comes, again, for budgeting purposes, because we would have already allocated for something like this.
I think chapters 4 or 5 is the
Chapter 4 and 5.
Yeah, the coaching component of it.
Okay, out of how many?
We have to write the book as we
As we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to piggyback off of what he just says, that in any large organization or any organization in general, budgets reflect the values that we hold dear, right? We put the money where we feel that things are important, and we tend to not put money where things are important. So a lot of organizations, they give a lot of lip service to DEI efforts, but no budget behind it, and really not valuable or of value to them. And in the fact that we've been talking about this and putting money now, and then probably talking about it in the finance committee, budget committee, about making some sort of semi-permanent or permanent item which we go moving forward, so that we can just entrench this culture. I think just reflects our values in general, that if it's in our hearts and minds and it's in our budget, we spend money for it. And so that message, I think, is important to staff. Just like we debated the last time we were here. Things are important, like we felt that the staff is important, then we make sure that they hear that with money. And if we think this is important, this is the first step, with some money behind it, and then we move forward.
On all aspects of operations.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And to that end, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to have the whole thing, but to move this.
There you go.
Yes, to authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Social Equity Lab for diversity, equity, inclusion consulting services for a 5-month contract not to exceed $75,000 and authorize a transfer of $75,000 from the general fund to the CIP fund. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sandy. It's been moved and seconded, all the above. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Welcome. We'd love to have an opportunity to meet with you on some evening, perhaps when we're here. We're all here, and if we can work.
Yeah, and so I'm thinking just kind of like understanding, so once Melanie, after the kickoff meeting, and we kind of have the structure and how we're gonna move forward, and Melanie and I will, provide an update to the board, and then we'll provide regular updates on a monthly basis as to where we are and what work we've done. So, I think, Melanie's done a lot of work with boards themselves and doing coaching with boards as well. Mostly at a nonprofit level, but I think, making sure the board's comfortable and understands the work we're doing is important. And so we'll make sure that we communicate that as we move forward.
Welcome.
But thank you for your support. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Did we take a vote? Was there those in favor?
Yes. You did. 5-0.
Great.
Thanks for joining. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you. Okay, to 6.2, received July 1 through, let's see, what is that, first quarter? I'm sorry, mid-year, operating budget financial reports. Michelle?
Yeah, so we're going along today. We have a couple of meeting information. So I'll keep this brief. As the board knows, we provide quarterly updates on our financials so that the board understands where we are, where our financial position is, and has a good understanding of where we're tracking with both expenditures as well as revenues. And so I provided a written report just to give an overview of where we are. I'm happy that we're tracking, as I mentioned in our last meeting, that we're tracking with a surplus at this point in time, and that includes our large unfunded liability payment that we always pay in July that front loads some expenses. And so we are so that is good. So we're tracking in a better position. We're back to, as you saw in the numbers with the camps, we're back to a little bit more normal times. I would say our midweek rentals are coming back. So we're definitely looking at that. At our last meeting, I received some comments from the board of you not quite understanding maybe what staff was looking at in projections and kind of where we are. So on page 2, I provided and that's 2022, not 2023. So I provided a table of revenue. So what happens with our revenue is that we take registration. And so we took registration on February 23rd or 25th. And so that money, people pay upfront. And so they pay that money upfront, but we hold it in a liability account. So we don't book that to any of our programs until the start of that activity, whether that's the start date of that activity or the facility booking. And what that does is it makes sure that if we have to cancel something, like we have a worldwide pandemic, and all of a sudden we shut down the entire district and we have to refund all of those things because we don't do any programs for over a year, that we have that money and we haven't spent it. So, so basically, so we collect all that money, it sits in a liability account. And then as that happens, it moves to our GL. So when money moves to our GL, the revenue moves to our GL, that's when it is actually confirmed revenue. We have that. And so the first column, I did it by I did the current revenue by departments, and so the total revenue that we've received as of 12/31/2022, I'm sorry, not 2023, is 5.4 million. So that's the money that is that's reflected in the mid-year reports. The next column is the forecasted revenue. So that is all of the revenue that we've received that's sitting in that liability account that will hit those GLs between 1/1 and 6/30/23. And so so you'll see that that's $4.5 million. The only thing that's not sitting in a liability account is that administration money, because that's our taxes, but we get half and half, so exactly half, so that's easy. So the next column is the total projected revenue. So so as of now, right now, with money that we have collected or due to collect, is we have collected and we're due to collect $9.9 million. So we're looking at hitting our $10 million target and probably exceeding that. So so right now, or as of I wrote this report on 2/28. So as of February 28th, we had we were about $321,000 under our budgeted number. I looked at the report again tonight before I came to this meeting. We have added another $150,000 in the last week. So so chances are very good that we will hit and exceed our budgeted number. So we're in a good position. In addition to that, revenues are tracking as they should. We may see, if we're increasing camp sizes and adding staff, we may see some expanded expenditures for that, but that will be offset by any additional revenue that we're able to have by allowing more children in. So the good news is that we're in a good financial position, and so we're in a strong financial position. The exhibit 1 is just the operating actuals versus the budgeted by department, and then the general fund ledger, which is all of the pages after the individual expenditures. And I did have a conversation with the chair, and I'm going to look at some additional summary information in larger categories, because I think while board has always received the general ledger, I don't think it is that helpful, because you have to go through each individual line item to really understand, you're not looking at that. So, so some of those broader categories in personnel and in supplies and things like that. So you can kind of get a broader sense of overall as to where we're spending our money, instead of just $500 and all of those things that up. So with that, I'll take any questions. I know it's getting on in time. So I just wanted to just give a brief overview, kind of explain what staff is seeing in the revenue projections, and we're confident that we're in our budgeted revenues and expenditures. So.
Questions?
Just a quick one, was, in the report, it indicated, Mount Diablo was operating the child care program at the school, Gregory Gardens. Do we know how long that is?
Well, they have funding right now for a couple of years. They got funding from the state. And of course the state is running into a deficit, so I'm not quite sure if they're going to get more funding beyond those 2 years. So we may have a flood back right after that funding runs out. So, but they had a 2-year funding from the state on that program.
Questions?
Well, I'll continue on. I had, just a question in regards to like Winslow Center in particular. Are we spending more on that particular facility than what its revenue potential is? Because it just doesn't seem to really bring in as much as what we have in terms of expenses.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does not. It does not break even. It never. The Winslow Center never has. It's definitely not one of our premier buildings. And utilities continue to go up. But the Winslow Center is also utilized for our preschool program, so we get significant funding for the preschool program. That's in a different budget. It's also used in addition to rentals. So that's just rental revenue. We also use it for classes and things like that. So there's revenue elsewhere that is contributed, that can be contributed to the Winslow Center use of that. So, but it's not exactly in that. This is just the rental revenue. And it's, some people, it has some charm for some people and they prefer it, but it really is kind of not the the space that anyone really wants to rent first.
Michelle, I'm wondering if we have under budgeted for park maintenance. We have the security issues that have come up since the beginning of the budget year. Some of our parks are suffering. Rogers Ranch needs some attention. And I don't know if we have the right, we have enough staff to do all of that. Should we be looking in this fiscal year at upping those allocations in order to be able to better take care of our parks?
I'll take a look at that, Sandy, if we need to make a budget adjustment. We are looking at increasing our contract maintenance, so expanding the current contract we have to supplement the staff that we have.
By how much?
Don't have that figure yet. We're looking at scope of work at this point in time. Because that will help us add service and be able to focus our staff, on some of the more important upkeep sort of things. If we have a contract doing the kind of day-to-day maintenance of shrubs and some of those type of things, and so without adding to additional personnel and our long-term liability. So we're looking at that, and so we'll definitely have those conversations as part of the budget. I'm meeting with
Well, but that's not till next year.
No, I
understand
that. I have a meeting with senior staff next week to talk about, hey, okay, so what do we have budgeted? What additional funds do you need? Because we have exceeded the funding for in our vandalism line, we've exceeded the funding we have. So so we may be coming back to you after we have a conversation about what things we think we need to do this year. So that is on the horizon. I may go to the finance committee with that.
Sooner than later.
It's on the list.
Yeah. Other questions?
Well, I have one just sort of general. I kind of look through and I see, some of the charges that we have for operational expenses like PG&E and water, but I don't know how much control we have over some of those things. I know rates are increasing, and if those are opportunities there in which we do some conservation strategies to help reduce costs associated with utilities in any way.
Yeah, we're pretty lean on the conservation. Our utility costs are going up across the board. So, so there's so much that we can do. Staff is looking at some efficiencies and operationalizing, whether that's changing out lighting, whether that's we have money in the CIP to talk about building management systems that will help us manage those utilities a little better. So that's on the priority list. To help with that. As we get more use, our utilities go up. We had our utilities were actually low during COVID, but we also were bringing in new revenue. So, so that, those are all sometimes wild cards, but staff has a pretty good handle on it.
I had just one other question, because I haven't seen internally designated funds before, and I just didn't know. Can you provide a little bit of explanation to me on those?
Yeah, so those are funds that were designated at some point in time previous to me being here, that were designated by staff. So the board designated funds are the funds that are designated in board policy, and so those are ones that are designated by the board or assessment district is designated by the tax. Okay, so we have to keep that in a separate fund until we move it to our general fund. But the internally designated funds are funds that were set up at some point in time. And so the senior fund, so the seniors is that's the money that we hold that is utilized by the senior club specifically. And so that's money that is we collect in membership dollars and we put there for their use. And so in addition to these funds, they actually have a separate bank account as well as an investment fund, so they have some funds outside of that as well. But yeah, so there was at some point in time, somebody designated one for computers, one for buildings, and one for arts. And so I don't have, there's absolutely no actual documentation on what those are supposed to be for. They were internally designated. The board funds, are spelled out in policy, so. But we can have a conversation with that with the budget finance committee.
Yeah, I just didn't know, how they were used or managed and.
Yeah, they're just kind of
activity
city
level. It seems like some don't get used,
Well, it's important that the fundamental information also filter down to the newer board members who have those, kind of legitimate questions. As well as our next subject, actually. So are there any other questions about the quarterly report? I'm sorry, the half-year report? Okay, then we will move on to 6.3, which is presentation regarding current funding status of the district's CalPERS and provide direction to staff regarding future funding schedule for unfunded accrued liability. I had become alarmed, as you know, from our last conversation about decisions we were making without, perhaps fully understanding what the consequences were, and where we currently stand with our 44 classic tiered employees, for whom we have a significant unfunded liability. So Michelle has asked Chris to put together some information for us so that we can get educated and, I think start thinking more big picture.
So I'm just going to introduce. So after our last conversation, about the COLA and concerns about unfunded pension liability, I thought it appropriate for the board to be briefed on the information that staff has and staff uses to budget and to look at our pension liability. And so Chris is much more he's much more versed on pensions and pension liability, having been a plan administrator and other organizations. And so we're going to go through just kind of some highlights of the actuarial valuations that were included in your packet. And so the information that is included in your packet is all the information we get from CalPERS about our pension plans. And we have 3 different pension plans, but I'm going to let Chris go through that. And so I'm not going to steal his thunders.
Good evening, board. Like many agencies, the district contracts through CalPERS to provide pension plan to many of our employees. This is kind of dense information, so I apologize. So the CalPERS board administration and its committees meet each month. At CalPERS headquarters up in Sacramento. So if you really want to dig into it, you can go there and find and meet all kinds of great people. You can see they have almost $440 billion in plan assets. Their 30-year annualized return is 7.7%. I think a lot of the investors on Wall Street would love to hit that number. Last year, fiscal year 2021, 21.3%, which is just phenomenal. Unfortunately, the year after they did 6.1%. Negative 6.1%. And lost a little bit of money. And we can talk a little bit about why that is. They're really kind of moving towards some more risky stuff. Hopefully, as the economics go up, they decide to be less risky. Overall, the fund is about 80% funded, and that number moves again more so based on returns than anything anybody does as far as putting money into the plan. There's over 2 million active members and almost 3,000 agencies involved.
And this includes both the contributions that are being made by and for current employees that are not classic, but also classic employees
and the classics, PEPRAs, CalSTRS. I mean, they have
and the unfunded
safety programs. Yeah,
prior unfunded also.
We'll get into some of that. I mean, they want all that money. That's actually missing from that pie we're talking about is the unfunded accrued liability. Next slide, please. This is kind of the flow. We and many other agencies, we collect some money from each employee's paycheck based upon their earnings, what plan they're in, if they're in the classic plan or tier 2 plan or pepper plan. At other agencies, there's safety plans and all kinds of stuff. Then the various districts and ourselves match that contribution with each payroll. And hopefully most of us then make a deposit to CalPERS right after payroll soon thereafter. And then CalPERS, they administer the plan. They'll collect those contributions, they'll invest them. They'll work with retirees and pay benefits through their retirement. Next slide, please. Here you can see kind of the allocation, how they kind of disperse all their earnings, and you can see how the plan has grown over, since 1980 through now, from 49 billion up to 439 billion. And here in the asset allocation section, down near the bottom where that 12% private equity, that's the new stuff. That's what they've been really getting into. It's really risky, and I think a lot of us that know anything about this would say it's great returns if you can get them, but you can also lose your shirt in that market. So anyway, that's what they've been doing. Next, and here you can see the discount rate change over time. So the discount rate is really, that's CalPERS targeted rate. The CalPERS board decides that every year. They say, okay, here's our target rate, and that determines, what they're hoping to earn, and that also informs us on what we're going to have to contribute, whether it's through employees, individual contributions, district contributions, and maybe for some unfunded reliability payments. And you can see here, that's okay. So in here on the right, you can see how the rates of return and the overall fund has grown over the years. Next up, and this is kind of the whole pot. You can see about 13% or so is employee contributions, about 32% is employer contributions, about 55% is return on investments. And this isn't how our plan looks like. You'll see that we have different contribution rates based on employees and so on, but this is how the overall plan is kind of. So this is the history of their investment returns. The blue candlestick bar, that's going down as their losses, going up at their actual returns in the various years. This kind of light blue line there, that's their targeted return over time. And that kind of dotted line that goes up and down, that's their rolling average rate of return. You can see some, if anybody's in the market, you can see some of the years that you might remember, 2000, 2008, 9. I remember those years. I lost a lot of sleep. During those years. Basically, there are long investment horizon spans on this. Some of them as many as 75 years from the first time an employee makes their first contribution and is matched by an employer. So their last benefit payment is made. So you have a young person come in at 20 years old, work for the district until they're 65, then they go out and they earn and they collect benefits until
75, 80.
75, 80 years old, 90 if they're lucky, right? So to kind of make it through all that, CalPERS uses a lot of assumptions. Those assumptions are done through actuarial science. They'll be on my pay grade, nothing I want to get into. But they do make a lot of assumptions. They're estimating what the contributions might be over the plan life. What kind of rate of return people might get over that time. How long a member will contribute and how long they'll have to pay benefit after that member stops contributing. And then they have the actual experience of the plan. How much do they really earn? How much do people really pay? And how much are they really going to have to pay out? And some of these they've gotten pretty wrong over the years. Some of them have gotten really right. So, we can get into that and I'd be glad to talk about all of that as much as I know. Next slide, please.
And just to kind of highlight, there were a lot of years, one of the things that contributed to the unfunded liability that we're in now, there were a lot of years where CalPERS didn't require employers to pay. And so, in those good years, and so we got very far behind because the employers weren't required to pay, it was optional, and a lot of them took that money and used it elsewhere, so. So that is kind of where we are at.
And it's a little darker, but one of my favorite statistics on that really is where the actual assumptions really changed is when there's this mass quitting smoking. All of a sudden, life expectancy start going through the roof. Really caused a lot of trouble within the actuarial community and the future outlook of these kinds of funds, not just here in California, but across the country. All kinds of states really kind of grappled with that change in lifestyle, and so on. Another way of seeing the unfunded accrued liability, you can see here, back in the 80s, all the CalPERS had to do was buy a 30-year treasury note, risk-free treasury note, and they could make their, benefits work. But as time goes on, you can see that as interest rates go down, CalPERS has got to, and other retirement pension plans, they got to step into riskier and riskier investment vehicles to make their contribution rates and to fund benefits in the future. So hopefully with interest rates maybe coming back up a little bit, we can get into less risky investments. So these are some of the agencies we compare ourselves to and their current funded status. Top left here is Hayward. They're about 77% fully funded. They're quite a bit larger than we are, but you can see that their present value projected benefits, that's $109 million they're going to have to pay off somewhere in the future. And their current unfunded accrued liability is about $21 million. Rita Vallejo, they're really similar to us, very close. Again, $22 million in present value, future benefits, unfunded accrued liability about $1.3 million, and they're about 79%. There on the top right, East Bay Regional, much bigger than us, but they have about $500 million in present value future benefits. Their unfunded accrued liability is about $80 million, and they're about 80%. And they're probably working really hard with this payments to make that come down. And then that's us there in the bottom right, about $21 million in present value future benefits. And this is just the classics plan. This is really where our unfunded accrued liability lies. Our unfunded liability at the time of this report, which was 2021, is about $4.2 million. And we're about 79% funded at that time. So the district offers 3 plans. We have the miscellaneous classic. We have about 44 people participating in that plan. 11 of them are active employees working with the district, and 43 are retired. Again, that's the plan that's really driving our accrued liabilities at this time. We have this tier 2 plan, which the district contracted for in 2012. This is probably an attempt to stop the bleeding that was probably happening back there. In 2008, 9, 10, 11, after that financial collapse. And then in 2012, California passed the PEPRA law, Public Employee Pension Reform Act. And in that plan, we have most of the current employees, about 38 active participants and 2 retirees. Really the difference between PEPRA and the previous plans were limits on compensation. They raised the retirement age, no more pension spiking, a lot of other practical things to really kind of keep these pensions from flying out of control as they look.
So any questions about that?
So just to kind of highlight this, so in our classic, which is the most, which is where all of our unfunded liability is at this point in time, only 11 active employees. So the rest of them were paying retirees. So there is no, there is no additional funding that we're getting from employees to pay into that because they're all retired. And so they don't fall off until they no longer are getting a benefit. And so it's only, so right now of our active employees, we have 51 active employees. Even though we show participants being closer to 100, so just to kind of understand that.
So the retirement for the classics, either those that are still working or those that are retired, when they turned age 55, their retirement benefit was 2% of their salary.
So the way that formula works is it's 2% times the number of years, service years. You know, so if you work for 25 years, at 55, you can get 55% of your 5-year average time salary. Is the way that works. And then in the classics, you know, I don't think that's the case here at this district, but there could be all kinds of things, all kinds of weird compensation that can go into that. I don't think that was the case here at all. But of course, that really low retirement age of 55, and we're living into our 90s now, if we're lucky, you know. So you're looking at 35 years of collecting a pension. You know, in my last district, I talked to people that had retired in the late 70s, and I was a little old. They had retired and they were still collecting a pension well into the 2015 era.
So in 2012, the board, as Chris just said, tried to grapple with this bleeding. And we moved it to a retirement age of 60 with 2% times the number of years of active service, so that there were no more people entering into the classic tier.
So just that change, you can see what it does to the funded ratio. I mean, even there's only 2 employees in there, they're the only 2 that are contributing to that. Plus, you know,
well, then Pepper stepped in and kind of did it for us.
Yeah, but just
we were a little ahead of the curve.
Age up a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, help with that future possible liability. And so, and then under Pepper, there's a lot of other things that happen that really kind of help reduce that future. So next slide, and these are the 3 plans that the district has, looking at our funded status among the 3 plans. Previously, we looked at different organizations comparing miscellaneous plans, but here's us. The top one is our miscellaneous classic plan. And again, the present value of future benefits, $21 million. So if anybody has any questions about how that works, I'm more than happy to help. And then our unfunded accrued liability, as of June 30th, 2021 was about $4.2 million, and we're about 79% funded at that time. And then as you go through, you can see the others are much smaller, about $300,000 in present value future benefits. We're positive, even though it's a negative sign, we're actually overfunded about $6,000. And then same thing with PEPRA, you know, about $4.5 million in projected future benefits. We're a little flush on that plan, just under $45,000 in black, funding that plan at about 1.2%. So those other 2 plans, and there have been unfunded accrued liability payments made on those other 2 plans, but they haven't been quite what, and they're not projected to be funded, need additional funding well into the future, at least according to current actual assumptions.
And what is the current employer-employee split on the share of payments?
I think I have that in the future slide, but
it's okay, we'll get there.
each one of these is a different split. So the classics is closer to 10.1%, while the Pepper, I think, is 7.6%.
For each employer and employee?
I don't want to.
Okay.
There's a lot of them. Give me a minute. I think we'll come to it here in just a second. The next slide will kind of show the current amortization of that unfunded accrued liability. Currently, you know, at 6/30/2023, that will be our unfunded accrued liability. Our minimum legal payment will be $471,000, which will currently as we've been doing in the past, we would budget to this minimum amount. The district currently makes all payments at payroll. We're not holding on to that money for any period of time for any reason, so we're not ending up with additional interest or anything like that. And generally, the district budgets to pay that unfunded accrued liability as the general manager mentioned earlier. We pay that right in July, so we don't incur 12 months of interest on that amount.
Do we have the cash, Chris, or do we borrow it from the county?
No, we have cash for this, and yeah, we have cash for this. This is. And as far as I can tell, this has always been something that the district, maybe there was a year we might have been red, but taking advanced on taxes, but
Well, I've only been making these lump sum payments for.
it's pretty, this is
5 years or something.
yeah, this is a new phenomenon, and I think that's really came about. I guess, I don't have the exact time, but it was right after Pepper when they really realized that these classic plans, they were not going to be able to fund these future benefits without these kinds of payments. And for some cities, this is put them in bankruptcy, but they can't even escape it in bankruptcy. You know, the city of Vallejo went bankrupt. They tried to get out from under this, and it's written in the state's constitution. The government agencies are out of this. These are promises with employees and the voters of California enshrined that in the Constitution. So, but there are ways that we can do better than this, and we can talk about that. Maybe the next one. So these are some alternative schedules, and these are put out by CalPERS maybe 3 or 4 years ago. They would send you to an actuarial, create your own amortization schedule. I know how to do time value amortization schedule. So we did this at my last agency, and we went with a 10-year amortization. And so these are just some things that are just easy to display. If we were to move away from that, just about 20-year amortization, and say go to a 10-year amortization, we increase our payment, I think, by about $45,000 or so. And if we could stick to that over 10 years, the district could save about $500,000 or so over 10 years. And actually, in my experience has been once you make these are called discretionary payments. Once you start making these, you start retiring older debt, which has a lot of amortized interest on it. And so you're not adding interest on top of interest. And so instead of having a linear line of this going down, it's actually much more parabolic. You'll see that this overall liability will disappear really quickly once you start making substantial prepayments on this kind of. And then they also give a 5-year amortization schedule, which is a little expensive, but there it is. And if the district could swing it, you could save, $1.2 million over $1.2 million over 5 years. So just a couple other things. A lot of other agencies that have what's called OPEB, those are other post-employment benefits. The district doesn't have any of that. Those are some things like, if somebody retires at 55, they're not eligible for Medicare till 65. So a lot of agencies are covering their insurance for those 10 years. It's a huge liability. This district doesn't have any of that. And there's other things that some agencies have put themselves on the hook for. We're just not liable for anything. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the state constitution and public employee law kind of govern all this stuff. We're contracted through this, and so we really are on the hook for it. So the best thing to do is to be as proactive as we can be, which it seems like this is what we want to do. And then finally, I just want to just touch briefly on, we have for part-time temporary employee, we have this other PARS alternative. So it's an alternative Social Security. It's a defined contribution plan for part-time employees. And, by the district using this kind of plan, we save significantly over contributions to Social Security. So anyway,
We don't pay for Social Security for any employee. Correct.
for any employee,
For part-time.
that is for part-time.
Isn't that
Sorry.
an alternative, Social Security alternative?
It's a Social Security alternative that we use for, again, part-time, seasonal, and certain classes. We call them our Cs, I think is what we refer to them.
And so who do we pay Social Security for?
One more time, I'm sorry.
Who do we pay Social Security for?
A's and B's who participate in Social Security.
What's an A?
So an A is our full-time regular employees, and our B employees are employees that work more than 1,000 hours. They're part-time employees that will work more than 1,000 hours a year. And that 1,000-hour threshold is really related to CalPERS. They require for an employee at the district, once they cross that 1,000-hour threshold, they become CalPERS members.
And who's an A again?
All full-time,
All
so full-time fully benefited employees are in our category A employees.
And we pay social security for them?
Yeah, we
in
pay
addition to
CalPERS as
CalPERS?
well as social security. We've always had paid into the social security plan as well.
Did you know that about this stuff? I thought CalPERS was a substitute for. Yeah, okay.
There are some agencies that they don't pay into Social Security, they don't pay into the teachers don't pay into Social Security, some plans don't. The plastics and pepper generally participate in Social Security. Some agencies do get a waiver. I have no idea what that's like.
So as a,
But we would have to
as a
do some alternative.
contributory benefit for employees, we're not only contributing toward their CalPERS pension, we're also paying toward their eventual social security payouts.
But their social security payouts, the social security payouts will also reduce their CalPERS pension, their payout over the long haul. So they won't get full on both. So CalPERS significantly reduces the benefit for employees who also get social security. And so, yes.
That's
And all of that is, you find out all about that by studying ERISA. Those lovely federal laws and all the arcane corridors and labyrinths.
So it ultimately reduces our liability as well. Because in our liability actuarials, they're not taking that into consideration, but those that draw social security will draw less PERS. And so, yeah.
still come out ahead.
Not exactly sure. It's a very big chunk.
There is no free lunch.
Social security.
Economic.
It's not that great of an effect on PERS actually, so. Yeah.
So just, part of this, as mentioned earlier, we're rolling into our budget season, and so, we're drafting our budgets and, there will be a 2-year budget cycle. And we also forecast an additional 3 years, so we're looking at 2027, 28. Should the district continue to make the minimum unfunded accrued liability schedule payment of $472,000, or should we consider some of these options, maybe chasing the 10-year, 5-year, or consider some other options, fresh start accounting? I wouldn't recommend. That would basically take our current unfunded accrued liability and say we're going to start over and give us a new 30-year amortization schedule. So instead of retiring our current in 2041, we'd be looking at 2053 or something like that. Section 115 trust, this would be the district, maybe instead of taking these discretionary payments and just giving them the CalPERS to reduce our liability, we put them into a trust and maybe earn some money on it and then put it in. And then pension obligation bond and another.
What's the current rate for a 115 trust?
It would depend on what your investment strategy is. So, but if it's something the board is interested in, I know we've had a presentation before where we could definitely look at that and figure out what that might. I mean, the market took a hit, so it would be.
So is the trust designated just to be used for the pension?
Yeah, so it's the 115 trust is authorized in law. It's an opportunity for us to put funds in there that we can invest a little differently than we can invest public government funds, as it's specific for pension payments. And so it can be used to either pay down our pension debt. It can be used to pay our current obligations. So if we're running short in a budget year, we could dip into that to make payments. Some agencies that have had these larger, 20 million plus, they've kind of moved in that with some of their surplus. Ours doesn't seem like, at least right now, and, our active retirees in the classic, our active employees going down as they retire. Whether, it doesn't necessarily seem in the current investment environment that it might be the best for us to keep us a little more liquid.
Chris, can you go back to the screen that showed the amortization through 2040 or thereabouts?
Yeah.
What is the rate of interest that we're being charged by?
It changes, so the discount rate, which is the,
6 point, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 6 point
what
seven.
is that, that's the discount rate, but, I don't know, does it,
That would be in the,
you have to figure out what the.
we just have to figure it, we would just have to divide it and figure out what the interest rate is.
So the point-
It's gonna be a little less than that this fall.
But it's not going to be anywhere near what we could gain on in a wood 15, right?
I would hesitate to give any investment advice in this market.
What you put it in.
Yeah.
If you're asking for my recommendation, it would be either stick with the minimum or go with some sort of, and you don't have to do the 10, the board wouldn't have to do the 10-year, just doing any sort of discretionary additional payment. The thing is if you chose to do something like that and say things went south in a year or two, and you decide we don't want to do that anymore, you can go back to the minimum payment, and the minimum payment will be recast based upon your additional discretionary payments. And so if you paid an additional $150,000, $200,000 into the fund, then you would be recast at that new basis. And so, from in the current market with, volatility being the way it is, the Fed, who knows what he's going to do? It seems like he's going to raise interest rates 2 or 3 more times quickly. And if the Fed continues to raise interest rates, that'll actually lower the discount rate because they can move into more secure investments and reduce their own volatility.
Meanwhile, we have 2022 to get through, and then the actual hit. These numbers are going to change when
They sure.
the new charts come
They
out.
sure. Well, the 21% hasn't been baked into this yet. This hasn't taken into account that 21% gain that they got at the
Then almost a 15% swing the next year.
It's very volatile, and it's not usually that volatile. I mean, they're putting 6%.
This year is not looking real good either.
So I'm available for any questions, and again, we're just looking for some discussion and your thoughts.
Something I was thinking about, with the unfunded pension liability, that when we had talked about going for the Measure A, Alan was there, Rob was at the time, but I recall that some of the folks that were opposed saying, well, hey, the district's carrying some kind of pension liability, they don't have like a plan to really deal with that, and yet they're going out for a bond measure. Why don't they address this liability first? I sort of feel like making some discretionary payments would be a wise thing to do to kind of demonstrate we're actively taking that into consideration. If we have the resources to do so, and there's no risk, because as you had said, you can't make an additional discretionary payment at that time, you fall back to whatever the minimum is, and you still get the benefit of being recast at that new value going forward. It's just cutting it down over time. So it sounded like we're in a position to be able to do that 10-year sort of amortization schedule forward, and I get to see us move forward in that direction. I'm going to make that our minimum basis for going forward.
It's a chunk of money.
But it's only,
That now.
yeah, the 10-year payment is only an additional,
50 grand.
50 grand,
50 grand.
which right now I wouldn't recommend hamstringing us with a 5-year payment schedule. But yeah, that's And that's a little too aggressive for us, so.
You can, Chris, can you also, if you decide, if we said, okay, we don't want to do a 10-year payment schedule, we want to do a 13-year.
You said, so when we cast the budget, if the board would like us to move in this way, we can cast a budget that has the minimum. And then we can cast it with a 10-year or something that might be, 500. And just kind of, see how that looks and what the board is comfortable with.
And, and know that, we have in that classic tier, we're aware that we'll have 2 more employees retiring in 2020. So we'll be down to 9 active employees. So we're moving in the right direction of that, but of course, those retirement payments are what they are. But in that casting, but we're moving in the right direction, but we do need to pay for all of the years previous that we didn't meet the goals.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have to do a 10-year, I mean, we could do something just above the minimum, whatever we get comfortable with.
Well, I think the shocking thing is that we have $500,000 a year to pay for this unfunded liability. And as you say, the public is not impressed.
Well, I'm gonna give my own personal opinion. I know the public isn't impressed, but I'm not sure that there's a real, that there's been this kind of a presentation to explain exactly what unfunded liability means. In any, whether it's a bond measure or any other election kind of thing, that's a typical, oh, there's an unfunded liability of X amount of dollars or whatever. And they haven't been able to deal with this unfunded liability. I don't know if you haven't been in an organization with that kind of term being used and understand just a little bit about what it means. I think it's a good headline grabber, but it needs to be explained, and maybe certainly as we come up on discussions about bond measures, we would need to have good explanations about this is how much we've got left, and we've got a 40-year schedule, or how many, not 40 years, but it's 20, 19, 20 years
Like
ago.
19 years at this point.
Or we can pay it off in 10 years and save $500,000. Which, that's always a good thing if it doesn't hamstring you in those 10 years when you're trying to make those extra payments. But it's, I think it definitely is something that we need to have a simple, easily understood explanation of what it means. Because you'll get, if you had 10 people sitting here, you get 10 different explanations of what it means.
And that we're comparable with other agencies.
Yeah, absolutely comparable. And we're doing well with this. This is, I looked at those and thought, this is way better than, if you go over here and look and what other organizations and entities are looking at. We're in pretty good shape.
And if you look at the city of Pleasant Hill, they have safety, so they even had a 3% at 50 calculation, which drove theirs, exponentially. So our minimum payment, if we went to 10 years, is $522,000. The minimum payment for the city of Pleasant Hill, or as was shown at the mayor's breakfast, for this next coming year is $3.8 million. So, if you look at that, if we're budgeting 10 million in expenditures, our payment is 5% for paying that down. So I mean, I know their budget is 36 million, but at 3.8 is 10% of their budget in paying down that unfunded liability. And it's only going up. Yeah.
Well, the city's income is derived from sales tax, so that's, that's got its ups and downs. Ours is from property tax. But only 50%, and the other 50% is,
Fees and charges.
yes, exactly. So, and we went through COVID years where we didn't have that piece of it, had maybe $100,000 compared to 5 million of it. And I don't think we can always count on the federal and state governments, bailing us out like we did last time, or just bringing us back up to par. So I think it's kind of hard to predict that we'd be able to do a 10-year plan and commit to it, obviously. But it does seem to make sense to.
It would be an internal commitment, that's really it.
Right.
It's not like, we're promising CalPERS we're gonna do this with you. There are other.
Of course, it would be internal, but whether it would be a commitment that we should make, or whether it's, we do it on a year-by-year basis, is a different question. Because, we've had a couple of good years, but we don't always have good years in the district.
And when we don't have, so if the internal direction from the board is, yes, we would like to speed up our amortization schedule, then, as Chris and I put the budget together, we would include that in the budget. And if we have to make decisions in future years, because, we have higher than expected expenses, then we would, like we always do when we need to cut things out of the budget, is talk to the board about, hey, this is our minimum payment, this is what we've been paying. Do you want us to pay this, or do you want us to offer, this service? So those are all conversations we have every budget cycle as to where we're going to put our dollars. It's been a lot easier, COVID times notwithstanding, but it's been a lot easier the last few years in the normal times because we've hit the revenue targets. But those are all conversations we have on an annual basis, but we would know at staff level that the board is interested in paying us down a little quicker than is legally required. And so
we could build a hedge too, which is maybe to pay the extra 50 this year and put 50 and additional 50 if we have the funds into a designated or directed account for $50,000 for next year. In the event that we didn't have the money, we could still make our additional payment.
Yeah, yes, we could. If there's a surplus at the end, we could direct that to another internally designated service fund. But that's basically a savings account for that purpose that we could use to backfill any revenue projections that might fall short.
Right, but it goes to Derek's point about showing that we're seriously looking at this because we want to get out from under this debt so that we can start using this $500,000, for other things.
I have one question, though. You said the payments for July, that we've always been on time and we don't approve any interest on that.
Yeah, if they offer you the chance to make monthly payments, okay, here's what you go, you have $471,000 divided by 12. And if you make it that way, it's $490,000 or something like that. They'll give you, this is what it is if you make 12 monthly payments, but if you make this one monthly, or if you make this one yearly payment, that cash to do that, we've been able to make that payment and save that interest.
Right. Well, where I was going with that is that, when we have our budget established in July, we should have a pretty good idea if we have that surplus. Is there, some sort of trigger that we can use as a mechanism that would say, hey, we're operating with a 1 or 2% surplus in those types of years that we say, okay, we're going to make a commitment that we have a surplus that we're looking at come, the end of the fiscal year, that we designate a portion for, the unfunded liability, making a discretionary payment of X amount.
We can look at that, and there are other agencies that have done that, and they've usually directed that into 115 trust. Like a 10% of their surplus is going to go into 115 trust. We could look at that and go, okay, 10% of any surplus is going to go into a designated fund, help us pay down our pension liability, and so we could do that as well. We'll look at. I'll task Chris with looking at some other agencies and their policy on that.
Maybe that goes into a trust, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just Unfortunately, we made what, 50 basis points or something on our savings now, so the
Yeah.
trust has got to do better than that.
And the reason they even move it around, I was talking with the general manager yesterday about like, just moving the money around is because of all these, like the city of Oakland, they can't even get parking tickets out right now. So they're trying to keep money in different accounts just in case the county can't operate anymore and then they got all our money, right? So we have some money here, we have some money here, just so we're kind of safe. But the interest rates are within a hair of each other and they're all within a hair of zero. Right?
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to know what 15 trusts.
But I could say on something like this, if you did something like that, rather than holding on to it, the benefit is put it in as quick as you can. So that you're not, because they're even getting compound interest.
Exactly.
And so you got, the trick is to stop that clock ticking as soon as possible. So rather than holding on, as soon as you know, you act and then kind of retire that and stop the clock ticking on that basis.
Can you make it discretionary payment at
Anytime. Yeah, anytime. The board could say, oh, you need to do that tomorrow. We would make that payment in the morning. I get a call in the afternoon. How do you want us to apply that? And I'd say it was then.
So we have a lot of options.
You have a lot. The board has a lot of options and a lot to think about. And we'll be talking about it more.
But it does sound as if there is interest in be presenting a budget to the Budget and Finance Committee that has some degree of additional payment. And also maybe look at whether to move some equal amounts of funds into 115 trust or into a designated fund. Because I'm really concerned about the next couple of years and what our obligations might be. So I think paying it down now helps the principal be reduced. So whatever hit we get is going to naturally be reduced.
It's kind of like making an extra payment.
We just don't know. We're making decisions here based on a lot of assumptions that we don't know yet. But is that, Deb, I pretty much captured that we're interested in making an additional payment
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
and maybe putting some if we have additional funds.
Yeah, so
and
you
you
do
guys
have
have
an
been-
answer, for anybody who asks the local street plan for that, we say. Making extra discretionary payments to us.
My support for that is also conditioned on looking at whether we've under budgeted for park maintenance. And whether we need to up that significantly.
It's sort of like the messaging behind that, especially since last time we budgeted for increased salaries. A sort of a counter message that, we wanted to recruit and retain great staff. And at the same time, we are very mindful of the consequences of that. And we're making an effort to pay down that liability. And how you said it, Sandy, I think it's an easy way to explain it. We decided as a board, we want to pay this down quicker. We're going to make a commitment as best as we can to pay it down over 10 years. I haven't heard any city or other local municipality come up with just a statement saying, pay when we get there. It's kind of what I hear most of the times I go to these meetings and so, but that's a simple message. Like anybody can understand that with the mortgage, right? We made a commitment to pay extra money, pay down in 10 years, we'll be done with it.
That's how we refinance the measuring, to get a better interest rate, it's going to save some there.
What the city did years ago, they borrowed money to pay down some of their unfunded liability. But that was when the interest rates were more advantageous. They were lower than what occurs. And the other thing they've done is they've set aside a reserve for the years when their sales tax revenue is not what it needs to be or whatever, so they can still make their minimum payments. So that was their plan. But that's, they got a different funding mechanism.
Yeah, but they certainly are worried. I mean, that was one of the questions on their interview was, what are we going to do with this? Because there is a concern. The big numbers, right?
I do want us to be careful about, because I think there's two things here. There's one, what is your fiduciary responsibility? And, I think that's, I think we're all on the same page, but I want to bifurcate that and the messaging and the perception and everything, because, to your point, we do have a plan. to pay off our unfunded pension liability, and it is right there. We can clearly articulate that. We can clearly articulate the steps that we took in 2012, the steps taken by the state in 2013, the steps that we can show our fiduciary responsibility. There's a lot of optics, and I think it's all in messaging and how you communicate it. What is the right thing to do, and pay this off as quickly as possible, and save as much money as we can in the meantime. And so, I mean, to me, that is just another step in what we're doing. And so, I don't want to lose sight of that, because what we're talking about doing here is above and beyond what we're, and I wouldn't even say what we're obligated to do. Our current plan to pay this off. We're not talking about letting this go in. Yeah, and just burden, additional, generations of Pleasant Hill regular Park District residents. To the contrary, we're actually talking about, setting the board 9 years from now up for greater success than, they would be under the current. I do just want to make sure that I'm all for, I think setting the 10-year, again, understanding that things can fluctuate, and setting the goal of, having that 10-year amortization, shooting for that number would be something that I think sends a clear message, that what we're trying to do.
And for those of you who are on the board as well, I think it helps our ultimate bond rating, because our Standard & Poor or Moody's or whatever, they look at all of this periodically and they give us a rating. And we do better on our bond sales when our rating is higher than if we get knocked down. I remember how excited we were when we got up to what, AA or something like that. I've forgotten what the rating scale is, but it was pretty high, and we had been pretty darn low for a long time. And so it took an awful lot of work to get up there, but it really helped with our bond attraction, shall we say.
Yeah, these are all good, not to belabor the history of it, but what the previous boards went through when it was, we were looking at the 7% employee contribution. At one point, I think employees were only paying 2%, or maybe not paying any of it at all, and then
it's fluctuated. I remember employees were paying 7%, we were paying 14 point something over.
Yeah.
It was just way out of the way. Yeah, it was crazy.
We ended up, changing that structure and making some bigger decisions that weren't talking about it. It's really hard to attract staff at that point when we were, we made some really tough decisions and making employees,
Pay their full share.
Paying their full share, reducing the benefits, long downgraded. The state stepped in a year later and did that for us anyways. But we have taken some pretty aggressive steps to getting this done. And anybody can throw out a soundbite and throw out a number, and it is what it is. We have $3.824 million in unfunded liability. There's no way that is the number, but. And I don't think you're gonna be able to show on paper to Joe, person off the street, convince them one way or the other, but that's not why we're doing it. We were elected to do this job. And I think this is a great thing to do. And that's why we're doing this. To the greatest extent we can get better at explaining how good we have been doing, I think that'll be something that we'll be talking about in the future.
So the irony would be if it goes down 50,000 extra because we found the wherewithal, and then CalPERS bumps that number back up $50,000 because of their screwy investment strategies. It's like.
Yeah, and that's the thing you hear. There's a couple people that and that's the legit comment. That's the one that they tend to make. Yeah. I wish I could know what was going to happen with interest rates in the next few months. But we don't. We're going off what everybody else is going off, and we're doing just as well, if not better than everybody else. I don't like to compare. I hate it when agencies compare themselves to one another. So most of the time, it's pat themselves on the back. But this is one where I think it sets a threshold, and you want to be better than that. Get there quicker. I think we can.
Our boards, I don't think have the wherewithal to do it. Maybe there were a couple of years in there when we could have considered it, but didn't. And it's probably a shame that we didn't. But the net result is the sooner we're out from under this burden, the sooner we can make ball fields and do other things that, you know, I think really important for us to, you know, be able to move this district into a new age.
I know just one question, kind of going back on the new retirement plans. Are there any risks of having future those plans where are they really structured now?
So there's structures, so there's really never going to be, you know, again,
That type of situation.
the benefit horizon is much shorter, in 62, but we're living longer, you know. Director Tran probably knows much more about how long people are going to live than I do, or any actuarial person. But so that kind of thing, and of course, there's the market influence, you know. There are things that, you know, but if you dig into those reports, they show you kind of what would happen under a very pessimistic scenario, and a very optimistic scenario. And even under the pessimistic scenario, the accrued liabilities are fairly low, you know, based on the contributions that the employee makes. And generally, when the market's doing that bad, the interest rates go up, and so, you know, they can move in bonds and risk-free treasuries if they move.
The other thing in the PEPRA law, which makes the newer plans, specifically the PEPRA plan, which is our largest plan of active employees, is it caps the salary. So the salary benefit, the max, and it changes each year with a COLA increase. But right now, the max salary benefit is $125,000. Okay, so that is that's the max. So that's what our employer contributions and our employee contributions pay into that amount. And so it's not like, you know, my salary, which is, you know, over $200,000, that I'm going to collect on that amount. I'm going to collect on the limited 125, and then it goes up 2% each year. And so you know, so it's whereas before. And, you know, the classic, you know, and this happened in a lot of organizations, you know, was based on your last year of service, and they would, what was called pension spiking, it'd be 2% of, you know, per service year based on $300,000, and, you know, or $200,000, and they were collecting more than their actual salary. And so that's the biggest thing that keeps us from coming in that liability. Yeah, is that we're not making payments, and we're not going to get, the employees aren't going to get a benefit on salaries above that maximum.
And so even like, you know, the board approved the retro active COLA, and so we'll make a contribution retroactively for classic members, but not for PEPRA members, because another provision in the PEPRA law is it has to be paid as earned. So, you know, you can't go back. Oh, retiring this year, we'll give you an extra $100,000 in the last year, which I think has happened in certain unnamed cities and municipalities.
I had one other question, you know, because it said that there were years in which, you know, agencies could not have to pay. Did the district ever have those types of?
All agencies at some point in time that took advantage of the good years that CalPERS had. And had more discretionary funds. So I wasn't here at that time, so I'd have to go back and look and confirm the payments that were made. But being in government agencies and knowing the pre-2009 times, you know, when CalPERS made it optional, a lot of government agencies took that money and used it elsewhere.
So we weren't necessarily like any different.
Yeah.
Now we might have done the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I joined the board in 2009, so.
Yeah. That's what everything.
I just kind of wondered how we might have gotten into this, you know.
In budgeting for a government agency, I mean, a lot of times you're budgeting to zero. So if you don't have this bill to pay, you're still going to use it in other places.
Yeah.
That's typically how the agencies, not every agency, some agencies do budget for a surplus and they plan on using the surplus for something else, capital or something. But a lot of them, they budget to zero, and so they use every dollar that they have come in, and then something like that goes away, and we definitely figure out somewhere to spend it.
Chris, thank you. Very, very helpful presentation. Very,
And I'm available for
thank you.
clarifying questions.
Twice. One more time. Fine. I was just gonna have you slide it in.
Oh,
Yes, you're good. I don't want the word to happen. So.
We're still recording, right?
We're still.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right, let's move on. Thank you all for that really meaningful conversation. I really appreciate it. Local reports from committee chair and opportunity to set meeting dates. Looks like Budget and Finance is having its first meeting coming up on April 20th. Oh, that's till April.
Not till April. So they're-
Oh, that's right, because you
Yeah.
guys set them far in advance.
Mega meeting. Mega meeting.
I'm sorry.
It's gonna be our mega meeting.
That should be a mega meeting.
You
So we did it 2 to 5.
you have a title for it,
Yeah.
right? Ah.
And Sandy, just to let you and Derek know, I would like to, after my meeting with staff, I want to get together with Lynn and Facilities Development Committee and just kind of talk about maintenance plans,
Okay.
Specifically with buildings and parks. And so that's on my horizon. So once I meet with them at the beginning of next week, I will contact you and we'll get a meeting on schedule.
Okay, very good. Derek, okay with you?
That's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, just we'll figure out the time.
Let's see. Oh, on the last page, Susie. Board announcements and requests to staff. Bobby, we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I just want to make a comment. I thought the presentation that we've received in the last several meetings has been fantastic, well thought out, well written, easy to understand, and so I wanted to thank Michelle and the team for that. Thank you to everybody that came to the parade. I was telling my wife after the parade, she's like, oh, how was it? There's a lot of, you're down in Sequoia Middle for an hour, and then you're walking through, and the coolest thing was we had that log jam on Santa Barbara, and then when we were starting to make the turn, I looked up and I saw all of you, and that was really cool, and it meant a lot too. I know to me that you all were there, and I know that it meant a lot to all the other kids and coaches that were there. So, thank you to that. And then I didn't ask it during the GM report, but just if things change, I had seen, I get a lot of agendas for other public agencies that a lot of parks have been closed, and I didn't know if we anticipate something comes up, if you had to make sure that
I will let you know, but we probably won't advertise it, because last time we did that, it attracted a whole lot of people. So I will let you know, we'll just put the signs up because it became an attractive nuisance. And Shannon knows when I did that.
Thank you, Bobby. Derek.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of dovetail off what Bobby had said, with this sort of conveyor belt of moisture that we've got coming through, hopefully, we can be in a position to be able to, protect the safety of people going into the parks if there's going to be flooding and things like that. So I know it's coming in opportunity over the weekend and throughout, but hopefully we're well prepared. Maybe not advertising, but just,
We are well prepared.
Thank you. Secretary Tran.
Yeah, just attended the PHB parade, my first one. Super impressed with the community and all the excitement. You can really feel it. Same, doing the wave. It was fun.
Was it the first time that you've? Oh no, you were in the 4th of July parade.
I was in the 4th of July, yeah, but I was taking pictures a lot. So I was doing this a lot rather than this, but no, it was super fun. I was also inspired by the number of young girls that were there, kind of a mixture. It was really, really inspiring. I'm still trying to convince my daughter, sure you don't know this. And those girls that were cheering like the entire time from the very beginning all the way to the end. I couldn't believe that they held their voice for that long. Cheering the whole time was so infectious. And then with that, this is Women's History Month, and yesterday was International Women's Day, so just encourage the district to celebrate that. And then in the email newsletter, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see my daughter in sort of little corner of one of the summer camps the other year. I go, wait a minute, I know who that person is. And so she was in a lineup of people or kids doing ukulele. interview process, so it was fun to see that. And I didn't have that picture, but now I do that I have cropped it up, so good to see that. That's it.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Super. Vice Chair, please.
The PHBA opening day was a blast. It was a lot of fun. I was appreciative that the rain held off. So did you get your game in?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
I think I heard that they shut down at 2. It was just, they are, I mean, we were involved with it for, I think, 13 or 14 years, way back. And, but they are so well planned and executing. You know, that whole day, and there's 1,700 kids approximately, you know, participating in the parade and everything that went with it. It was, I mean, we were done at what, 9:15, I think. It ended, it was great. So it was a lot of fun, and I want to thank the Mark gentleman, the PHB, the head commissioner.
Oh, Brian.
Brian,
Yeah,
excuse me.
Brian.
Yeah, Brian. He did a great job. That was a lot of fun. Chair Donato gave an excellent presentation of the state of the district at the mayor's breakfast. Dealt with microphone issues, but she did an excellent job and represented us well. And it was pouring rain when we left, so we're doing that again. And I think just hearing everything that went on tonight and what we talked about going forward, we have a very busy year coming up. So we need to all stay very healthy and happy so we can get it all done.
Thank you. Thank you for the compliment. Before I spoke, I had the privilege of speaking at the mayor's breakfast. Bobby made a comment to me. He said, "There's always going to be something you forget to say." And there were a couple things I forgot to say. I forgot to introduce our general manager. So I apologize to you, Michelle, for that, to get to the board members, but lost it when it came to remembering our general manager. Terrible. And lastly, I had intended to end with more of the good vibes discussion that the marketing team had set me up with. And I think it kind of dovetailed with the opening comments having to do with the beauty of a child just laying in the grass and how peaceful and happy that child looked. And at the end of the presentation, what I wanted to say and what I'll say now was that the Park District recognizes that not everybody's okay coming out of COVID. And that we play a role, I think a very important role in helping people get through this time. And that the spirit of good vibes as set by our staff is indicative not just of we want to have fun. This is not about frosting. This is about also reviving people's spirits after a really long, hard time. And I think that's true from preschool all the way up to teens and seniors. That every program that we have seems to have this core of trying to get people to smile and to feel like they belong and to be part of something. And so I just should have and wanted to let the audience know that that was just very important to all of us on behalf of all of them. So I'll say that now. The part I forgot. I was up at Dinosaur Hill Park yesterday with my grandson, and it is terrible. It's just terrible. Spoken with Michelle about it, and it's part of the genesis of why I'm concerned that maybe we're not spending enough money on our maintenance. So I'm really happy, Derek, that you and I are going to have an opportunity to meet with staff and talk about some of those things. So also the graffiti seems to be back. It was terrible on Thursday night when Jack had his first 4-year-old co-ed game. But I went down into the playground and there was still a lot of graffiti down there. Michelle has explained that we've got a contract service coming on. And so maybe we're just in a lull here, but it may also mean that the security things that we should also be talking about need to be front and center. And last, with respect to the PHBA, 1,700 kids, it's always impressive to see. And with the weather so iffy, they still came out. They loved it. My grandson wanted to sleep in his hat. He was so excited about being a Rocky. It was so cool. But there was a stat that also came out that troubled me, and that was that the PHBA leaders told me they had to turn away 200 kids because there aren't enough fields. So I think that's just really sad, and it's something that I don't know if there's something we can do about that in the future until our new ball fields get built, but it just is heartbreaking to think that kids have to be turned away because we just don't have enough facilities here to accommodate them. So just an observation. I wanted to thank the PHBA leaders for not only their wonderful invitation, but the detail and the care with which they explain where to be and what to do and all of that. They were just so gracious. They have demonstrated that for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's just a tip of the hat to them. They treat us like royalty, and I'm not royalty, but I feel wonderful when I'm part of that because they make me feel wonderful. And I know that they probably make all of us feel wonderful because they really value the relationship, and even more so, I think, than the city. That they really love the fact that the Recreation Park District is there to help support them do what they do for the kids in the community. Yeah. And I think that's it. So lengthy meeting, but I want to again thank everyone, Michelle, you included, Chris, and other staff members who have left for a very good conversation on a number of very important subjects on our DEI issues. And I hope that staff got the word about how important that policy is, from all of us, and that we all reiterated that, and that we want this to succeed. Love meeting the new staff people. Finally, this financial conversation was very important because it's really money's the heart and soul of everything that we're able to do. So we have to make good decisions based on good info. So thank you, Chris, Lori. And with that, we're adjourned. Okay, it's 10:20.